morning, everybody. Dadman Walking 55 coming to you live here at 4 minutes after 7 on the East Coast. Yes, it is my fault. Yes, I am late because it's my fault. I got the tweet out as the countdown was going. You know me. I got to do stuff in an order because I cannot type and talk. So welcome in again, everybody. Yes, I've got the nuts in the background, our squirrel stream nuts, because why not? We might be getting over the place tonight. We're going to be talking about writing and editing tonight and wherever my great guest wants to go. The great guest that was so powerful and so big and important. It took 2 shows from the very beginning we had to plan to get the time for this great, wonderful lady that we've gotten to meet, talked to a few times in the backgrounds, and I almost forgot to start streaming because we were having fun talking in the background. But started with animals, everything else, her passion about goats and other animals. But tonight you're going to get to hear a different side of her, about her passions about writing, editing, reading, and stuff. A lot different. It's been a while since I've done a book chat. It's not quite the same, but hey, we're going to have fun, and I see a lot of people out there. So without fail, let me shut up. Let me make the way. Let me bring in the highly touted guest of honor, the one, the only, the great, the Eclectic Goat. Hello, Goat.
That's a lot of pressure. I don't know that I can live up to that.
Oh, it's okay. They pay me by the word. So I'm like, I don't know who pays me, but anyway. How are you tonight? It's good to see you.
I am well. We were talking earlier about, if we couldn't come up with anything else to say, just come up with baby goats. And I realized that actually I might have some pictures that people might be interested in. So I'm busy
absolutely.
I'm busy copying them into a folder in case we run out of things to.
Well, that's okay. And we can, if you want to, we can interject them from time to time, because I know people love the goats and the animals. Everybody loves animals. So let me go ahead and say hello to the chat then while you're working. See, I couldn't do what you do. I cannot chew gum and walk. I cannot type and talk. So, and hey, Legatus, good to see you tonight. How are you tonight? Good to see you too. Rachel Piercy, Art, well, welcome. Good to see you tonight. Hope you're doing well. Couldn't be more early. Well, you arrived exactly when you were meant to arrive, but great to see you. And batting in the 3rd spot is the great bear from Pinellas County, Snorapoopas Tuber. Howdy, sir. How are you doing tonight? Let's see. And Fallout Dave from the nation's oldest city comes in at the cleanup spot. Yay, Fallout Dave. And hey, the most beautiful part of my channel that keeps it going, and even when I'm falling apart, it's the great Mrs. And thank you. We got a Mrs. Raid. Hey, thank you for coming over, Mrs. Appreciate it. She was just doing some Fortnite, and good to see you. And his buddy said, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. We've lost 2 subscribers. We're down to 710. Oh, the panic, the humanity. But anyway, it's a number. We have fun.
The loss of bots.
No, I hope so, because you never know when you make somebody mad on a given day either. So it happens. But yeah, that.
Well, in that case, screw
them. So yeah, exactly. Man, you don't hold back, do you?
Hey, I told you it was a grumpy goat today.
I can tell. That's awesome. Grumpy goats make for great shows, so that's great. All right. Question: why are we so blessed to have the great Eclectic Goat in 2 weeks in a row? Like I said, we had so many topics to talk about. Last week we went 3.5 hours, and just on the animals, and I think we're trying to stick to 2 hours a night, right, Goat? Because last week was kind of hard waking up.
Don't let him fool you. I think he was just really desperate.
No, just has all kinds of stuff to say. So share it out, tweet it out, get your connections, get your drunk animals, your neighbors, the hobos, everybody come in, hit that like, subscribe. So, oh no, I'm not singing the Unicorn Flakes song tonight. Okay. We do have of course you do have unicorns. There are unicorns really, like rhinos and other one-horned animals, but no. Oh, Snorapoopas is already getting earplugs ready. Oh gosh, you guys. So Snorty is planning on singing. That would be good. He says you're so lucky. All right, Eraserhead's here. Hello, Eraserhead. Welcome. Very important mod on a lot of channels. Great to see you with us tonight, Eraserhead. We appreciate you being here. Oh, and Rachel Pierce the art. Yes, the Eclectic Goat is one of the best people I've met on the internet with the best avatar.
Aw, thank you.
I want to ask about that avatar, and actually, in just a second, because that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you about tonight. And we got a polar bear said hello to the goat, and oh gosh, General Kenobi. So, oh gosh, we got screaming goats, and we don't just like baby goats; we demand them. Okay, if you got a picture, go ahead and bring a picture up. We'll share it if you got one.
I'm afraid that the pictures I brought up involve them somewhat less alive than they are in.
Oh, ugh. Okay. Well, whatever. I trust your judgment. You tell me when. So, but yes. Oh, just 2 hours minimum. Oh, Legatus wants a 2 hour minimum show, not a maximum show. Okay. Well, hopefully we could um, uh, meet your wishes with that, and we meet your wishes with the goats. So that's it through the chat. But how has your week been? How are you doing tonight?
I could do with a little less rain. Mother Nature needs to get her act together here.
Oh
It's
man.
it is soggy. It is.
Wow.
I do not have words for how much water there is in my pastures. My waterproof boots are still wet on the inside because of the flooding in over the top.
Yeah. It's
And all the
we
animals are just sitting indoors going, "No, no, forget it. We're sick of this." The ducks are tired of it.
Oh man, we've had those times down here in Florida where it's like, would you stop? Would you stop? And just, I mean, like you said, it's bad when the waterfowl are like, hey, we've had enough of it. So, yeah, and actually, Racerhead says it hasn't stopped pouring for about 3 days there. Wow. We've actually had some of those here in Florida, and worse ones are usually tropical storms. We actually had one time a tropical storm that actually made landfall near us. We don't get hurricanes at landfall where we are, fortunately, but this one like moved like 3 miles an hour for like 4 days over the same area, and the flooding was just immense. It just, and like you said, the water, it, no amount of drainage can handle it. It just gets crazy. Buddy is in California, 72 and dry there. Yeah. Unfortunately, we're at 100 degrees already and hotter than Hades. So, oh wow.
Pardon the fella outdoors who needs to, tell us all how much he's compensating.
Yes, I know. Oh man, several of y'all are up where there's a lot of rain. So we've had it a lot too. Yeah, Snorter Poopas. Here's a Florida test. It's been raining too much when the gators are wearing their waders. Exactly.
Yep.
But now waders, though, what's funny one time was we had flooding because of one of the storms, and one of the anchorettes at the local TV station was out there in the middle of the floodwaters reporting with the waders on. A friend of mine said, "Look, if she didn't know where the hell she was standing, because if she had stepped about 6 feet backward, she would have gone off into the creek."
Well, yeah, when it gets flooding like that, you can't tell where the edge is. And
Mm-hmm. Exactly. All right, so I think we have something. Are you ready for me to bring this up?
Showa.
All right. Ooh.
So for those of you who are unaware, my real world career these days is that I do writing for a number of magazines on food recipes, local food, homesteading, basically all sorts of topics that I can BS my way into getting articles on. And generally part of it's one of those things I think people don't think of, but a lot of magazines, when you're writing for them, in order to get a pay bump, you have to be able to provide them with high quality pictures. And so when people say, does your homestead make money? Well, the answer directly is no, but it does allow me to do better in my writing career. So if anybody's thinking about getting into writing something where you have easy access to being able to take high quality photographs sometimes can really kind of get you a heads up, or a
Mm-hmm.
leg up, I guess is the word I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the first year that we lived here. This is kind of a funny thing. The first year we lived here, we had a ton of projects. So I planted the garden And then I proceeded to kind of forget about it, and everything just got weedy and terrible and nasty. Um, and picking through it all in the fall, this was the first load of the harvest that I got that year.
Hmm.
And every year since then, I have been very careful to make sure that everything was weeded and everything was cared for, and I haven't gotten half the take since.
Oh wow, that's
So I begin
yeah.
to think that maybe, our gardens looking tidy and in nice, neat rows is really overrated. The other thing I do get every year, is
Hmm.
we throw our leftover squash goes in the compost, and the compost grows amazing squash plants every year now.
Wow, that's
Uh,
neat. That's
they
neat.
just take root, and then they take over like both the compost pile and like half the yard.
That your story about that reminds me. The Mrs. Years ago we had a blueberry bush. It grew. She ignored it for years, and the one year it was starting to show some signs of going down. But then as she tried to water it and take care of it, it like died. It accelerated the death span, and it was like, oh my gosh. Sometimes to try hard and it doesn't work. Although she did manage to keep growing so many damn habanero peppers, which we don't eat one year because we didn't realize we had left the water timer on, so it was watering those suckers every day, and those things grew like cockroaches. They were everywhere. We gave people a lot of habanero peppers though, but I tell you it sounds like a great idea too. Is if you start to write, go into something that you have access to, or is a passion of yours. Um, because that there's nothing worse than hating what you have to write about. Like most of my writing is trade work, is real work, writing audit reports, and there's nothing more boring than that. So, but what do we got here?
Um, Take a guess.
Uh, Honey from
What's
bees.
Why are they different colors?
Um,
Does the chat have guesses? Why are they
yeah,
different
Chet, if you
colors?
have guesses, yeah, honey. Wrestler heads growing jalapenos and habaneros. Is it the uh, some are in a honeycomb, like in a nest, and others are in a beehive, but like one's in a beehive and others like the farmers do in the containers.
Nope.
I can't describe it right.
Even in the containers, they will build the same types of hives.
Okay, different
Oh,
flowers,
Rachel's got it.
different seasons. Oh, and I think Miss Winter Honey is darker,
Yep.
and
Well, fall, yeah.
yeah.
So in the springtime, they have to. I mean, first of all, they're very hungry, and they're
Mm-hmm.
going after pretty much anything they can find. And it tends to be lighter. It tends to be sweeter, and it's less complex. In the fall, they've had access to a lot more different types of flowers, and they're a little more finicky.
Hmm.
And especially if it's late fall, they will also take off things like burdocks and basically tougher plants that we don't tend to consider as being you know plants. We tend to
Mm-hmm.
consider them weeds. Um, and you end up with a more complex, darker colored, thicker, um, less sweet honey.
Oh wow. Okay. So the darker honey's less sweet.
Yes, not.
Well,
I mean, not by a lot, but
yeah.
so cooking with honey. This is one of the things I've written things on.
Mm-hmm.
Cooking with honey is going to depend on what you're using for honey.
Mm-hmm.
If you're using spring honey or that kind of thin, light stuff, that, by the way, is also when you buy honey in the grocery store, assuming it's real honey, which it very rarely is. Um, it's usually spring honey because what they'll do is, they move hives from place to place in warmer climates, and they just make sure that they have kind of quick, fast sugar sources, and they encourage them to basically keep mass producing rather than storing.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get this light, sweet honey. And so most recipes will tell you that if you are substituting honey for sugar, you only want to use about 3/4 as much as what it calls for. Um, but that isn't necessarily the case. Oh, and you have to add more solids because it's so thin.
Okay.
Um, that
Because
isn't necessary.
I think I had
Sorry.
to do that once. I think with sweet tea, I can't remember. There was something I was trying to make one time, and one of the substitutes it could be was honey. What was honey, and yeah, the ratio. We had to get the ratio right. But that's
Hmm.
yeah.
So you have to play with it a little bit because if you have a darker, so if you have something like, so I made German honey cookies once for an article,
Mm-hmm.
and I made it with spring honey. I didn't have any fall honey at the time. I made it with an orange blossom honey, and then I made it with buckwheat honey.
Hmm.
Um, and I didn't think to grab the picture, unfortunately, but I have pictures of like the different batters made exactly the same, but one
Mm-hmm.
had spring honey and one had buckwheat honey, and they do not even look like the same recipe.
Right.
And the buckwheat honey cookies came out tasting like molasses cookies. They didn't
Oh
even taste
wow.
like they didn't even taste like German honey cookies. They tasted exactly like molasses cookies.
Oh man. Okay. Well, that's interesting. I don't know much difference between the two, but that is interesting how uh, it makes sense though if you think about it. Just what you use is what it comes out with. But
I
then you
ran
do
it.
it to your taste too, right? You figure out what you
Actually,
prefer.
I tend to do it to other people's tastes. I don't like things very sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Rachel says filling the house with baked goods and saying it's okay, it's for work sounds like a dream job.
Yep. Yep.
um, I don't like things. I like things much less sweet than most people do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if I'm making a strawberry rhubarb pie, I almost never add sweetener if it's for me
Right.
because the strawberries are sweet enough. They make the rhubarb,
Mm-hmm.
quite bearable for me. Uh, so what I have to do is I have to taste test it on other people.
Right.
Uh, so Rachel, all of my friends also are all for me. Filling the house with
Mm-hmm.
baked goods and then being forced to eat it all and say, well, it's to help with their job.
Yeah.
Um,
Mrs. had actually made a comment. Feel fall honey is a deeper, more complex taste.
yes, very much.
Yeah.
Orange blossom honey was wonderful, but we decided that in baked goods it wasn't worth how much more it costs. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's wonderful for cooking, but not necessarily for baking.
Right.
Um, on the other hand, if you're baking, you should always use duck eggs or goose eggs if you can, because your baked goods are going to be much fluffier.
Then regular chicken eggs.
Yep.
Oh wow. Hmm.
The ratio of yolk to white is different with waterfowl than it is with chickens, and it makes for richer, fluffier baked goods. They'll rise better.
Hmm. What about quail eggs? Have you ever used quail eggs?
I have not. I do know people who have though, and
Mm-hmm.
quail eggs are interesting, especially if you happen to know people that are allergic to eggs,
Mm-hmm.
because quail eggs are so nutritionally different that they tend to not affect people in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And there are rumors, it's not, there aren't a ton of scientific studies on it yet, but there is a lot of kind of word of mouth things that suggest that quail eggs might actually help with some food allergies.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I can just verify is that if you eat raw honey from your local environment where you spend a lot of your time, it helps with seasonal allergies.
Oh, interesting.
We did not do a lot of honey this last year because the bees all decided they were going to move into our barn, and we
Oh
haven't
boy.
quite
Yep.
figured out what to do about that yet because they're in the walls.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but so we haven't had the same access to the honey. Um, and my allergies are worse than they've been since we moved here,
Oh no,
as
no.
as have my husband's.
I tell you, you're supposed to be away from the allergies, outside the big city. But you know, the trees are everywhere, pollen's everywhere, and
Hmm.
It's crazy. Then of course if you have oak and if you have wood allergies, it just who
Yeah,
knows.
if you have allergies to things like smog, it's not going to help. But if you have allergies to pollen,
Hmm.
um, eating raw honey really helps those types of allergies a lot. So,
Well, that's interesting to know. That is very interesting to know. Folks, we got the great Eclectic Goat with us. Right now, we're talking some honey as we're getting ready also to talk about writing and editing and things like that. But right now, we've hit on the topic of honey.
well,
That's usually what we do around here.
these are the things I write about. So,
Yes, I know. Well, incorporating. Which do you have a favorite topic to write about in terms? We know we talked about food,
oh yeah, here we
animals.
go.
Oh my, that's a skull, right?
That is a skull.
Whoa.
I did an article once. It was a historical article on how cultures used to use basically every part of the animal,
Mm-hmm.
and uses they had for various bits and bones and horns and I have also used this because a lot of people think that there is a difference, or they think that goat horns and sheep horns are pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I have also used this in educational demonstrations on um, the differences between the two animals.
Hmm. Yeah,
You
that's
can't
really.
you
Sorry. Go
can't
ahead.
really see it in this picture, but like right here, these are actually just resting on top of a little nub that's only about a half an inch long. They'll pop
Oh,
right off.
oh wow.
Sheep horns are just like your fingernails, whereas goat horns are actually a limb. They have
Hmm.
nerves, they have blood vessels, and they
Right.
use them like we use hands.
Oh wow, that's interesting to know. Well, I know like rhinoceros. I guess their horns are I think what feather or they're like blood vessels stuff like that are straw. They're like strawish, and then they come together into something firm, but not like that. That's like hard as some of the other
Hmm.
horns are. So let me say hello to Comic Relief Crusader. Hello, welcome in. How are you tonight? Good to see you. Yeah, how do you when you decide you want to write about something? How do you decide what you're going to write about? Or does your where the money dictates sometimes based on what the interest is or the article?
It can be a couple of different things. So there are companies that I tend to do a lot of regular business with, and either either I will send them a list of things and say, "Hey, here's some ideas I have thought of. Do any of them interest you?" And then
Mm-hmm.
they'll say, "Yeah, we'll take this one, and this one. We need them for these due dates, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll pay you X amount. Does that work?" And I
Hmm.
pretty much always say yes. The other option is that sometimes they will contact me and say, "We need an article on this topic because we're getting a lot of requests for it.
Mm-hmm.
Are you interested?" And I pretty much always say yes. On very rare occasions, I have also gotten an email that says, "Hey, somebody missed their deadline, and we now have 2 days to get a story to fill this gap." And I'm like, "Yep, on it."
Yep. Double the price. Double the price.
Um,
Yeah.
but those are, they're kind
Mm-hmm.
of a pain, but
Yeah.
I have access. I basically have an archive now of really good research journals. Um, I read really fast. I can research really fast, and so I can
Yeah.
usually it's usually not, usually it's 1,000 words, so I can usually bang it out in an afternoon.
And
It's not
see,
that hard.
that is a talent. That is a talent to be able to do that because, like, I struggle at work reading statutes and audit reports and stuff. I'm a slow reader, and to be able to process that kind of information to get through it that quickly is really is really a great skill, I think, because I mean we're challenged on our times and stuff like that too. But if you don't have the ability to get through it quickly, and I mean then you lose your efficiency and productivity and all that. But I like I said, I'm amazed at your ability, like you said, with the amount of words that you can do at that. And how has it just been a natural thing for you? Is it really easy? Because see, like to me, when I binge read, it has to be something like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars Expanded Universe. It had to be something really like. But how are you? Are you a binge reader also? And are you able to do it binge read and still enjoy um, what you're reading?
So I think it started because when I was a kid, I read a lot. Despite the fact that I was not, I was of the generation where like having your own television was kind of the thing. Um, you know,
Hmm.
I have a TV in my room instead of just having to watch my parents' television. Like I was that generation.
Hmm.
But my parents chose not to have a television at all. And that combined with the fact that we kind of lived in the boonies meant that there wasn't a whole lot to do.
Yep.
um,
Yep.
so I read a lot.
Hmm.
Um, and so that, that picked up my speed capability in general. I do a lot of editing, and so when you're used to going through and looking for really tiny, tedious details,
Hmm.
it's not that hard if you're not looking for tiny, tedious details. I mean, like it's almost a relief to just read.
Yes.
Um, and frequently, I'm looking for specific keywords before I even start an article.
Mm.
So if I know I need an article on goat horns, I'm going to look in journal articles and I'm going to look for keywords horns. And I'm not even going to bother to read the article if that doesn't pop up. That is the one area where technology has really made research
Hmm.
easier. Uh,
Right.
I think there are a lot of other areas it's made it harder. But being able to do search and skim of 20 articles to find six that will do what I need,
Hmm.
um, has definitely made things better. So
Well, I know. Oh, I love Rachel Pierce the art. I'm a speed reader, but the slowest writer on the planet. I can understand that too. That's true. Hey Wade,
it's
how are you
it's
tonight?
it's interesting, Rachel. There are days I just can't write at all,
Hmm.
and I could sit in front of the computer for hours and nothing's going to get done. I'll get two sentences maybe.
Hmm.
And then there are other days where the mood hits me just right, um, and I can do 10,000 words in a day.
Wow. It's
Um,
just
th- Let me tell you that
yeah,
that fast
yeah.
is very unusual. I've only had that happen a couple of times. But I can, like I said, I can go from scratch and do the research and writing for a 1,200 word
Hmm.
article in 3 hours.
Wow. That's highly impressive. Yeah,
If
I do
if
understand about
if
the.
you catch me in the right mood.
Right. I think mood, and everything it is also dependent because like I said, my experience is report writing and stuff like that. I kind of same
Yeah,
things.
and
Look
that's
for
very different.
keywords. We do a lot of plagiarism because we try to copy like accountants do. Is like, we can do. We try not to trailblaze if we can, but there are times when you have to come up. With stuff and you have to research through a law or something and try to figure out the keywords. A lot of times it's through the just you have to do it visually and really key things. One of the issues that we're having internally is the use of AI in terms of writing our reports and stuff like that, or developing findings and things like that. And there's still a bit of hesitancy about doing that, although some of the younger people like it. I'm an old dinosaur where give me some old previous reports and let me look at them and let me use the language myself. Let me get into the English and figure out the phrasings, make sure the words mean what they mean. And what have you come across that with so far with the use of AI in terms of writing?
Um, it of course is one of those topics um, that is very controversial. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
for some reason it is not quite as controversial with writers as it is with artists, which is interesting because it actually probably will affect our careers more than artists.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's I haven't run into it a ton because most of the stuff that I do, they specifically do not want AI art. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, sorry, AI writing. Um, Most people will run their stuff through something like Grammarly, which uses AI to check for, errors.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I usually run mine through a plagiarism checker, just to make sure I haven't accidentally copied anybody else's work. That also uses AI.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there are a lot of companies. So the major issue actually is that a lot of companies are using these programs which supposedly can detect AI.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, assuming he's talking about the picture, that
Yeah,
actually
he's talking about the picture. Yeah.
was why I left it up. I wanted to see
Yeah.
if anyone could guess what it is.
Yeah. Guess it, folks.
Um, the problem is that they pull up a lot of false positives.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, Razorhead's right. AI music seems to not get a lot of flack at all. Um,
Yeah.
um,
I know about art. I've seen on other streamers. It's like, everybody trolls in the chats. It's like,
so one of the
yeah.
things that's interesting is that if you are primarily an editor and then you do some writing, you
Mm-hmm.
are more likely to get flagged as AI because what AI decides is if your writing is too grammatically correct, it's probably fake.
Oh gosh. Wow.
Um, do you know what an M dash is?
No, I do not.
Okay, so an M dash is like if you got a sentence and then you have the line and oops, now I have another thought, and then you have another line, and then you go back to the original sentence.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an M dash.
Oh, okay.
Um, so in most cases, if you have a side thought in a sentence, you use commas because normally the side thought, see if I can explain this without having a visual. Normally the side thought is still related to the sentence you're talking about. So, um, honey is really sweet, comma, unless of course you're talking about fall honey, which is a different story, comma. And so you have to make sure that you don't add quite as much as sugar. So that would be a case where you would use commas to separate that out. An M
Mm-hmm.
dash is used if you have a thought in the middle of a sentence that has nothing to do with the sentence.
Okay.
Um, it's frequently a dialogue thing. If you're writing dialogue and you have like some old guy who like continually goes off on different conversations in the middle of his sentences. Um,
Okay. I think I
be,
understand now. Yeah.
well, because most people don't know how to use them, they just don't use them. They always use commas.
Right.
So using M dashes is now considered a flag for AI,
Oh, jeez. Jeez.
which really sucks because I love M
I
dashes.
do. Yeah. I know if it. It's really interesting. See, art is the one where people feel the most comfortable saying you're not doing your work, which is always fun. Yeah, I know that
um,
with art, that's a big issue. But
proper use of semicolons is another
mm,
thing. If you know how to actually use a semicolon,
yes, yes,
AI decides you must be faking it because nobody knows how to do that.
yeah. I, it's bad enough getting people to use your right, these days. But imagine anybody getting the use of semicolons, or when do you use a colon? Uh, you know,
Colons are usually used if you're about to make a list.
yes. At least I figured that one out. I don't get reviewed on that at work, but it's.
That's the most common use for
But
a
you did
colon.
say something that really got my attention. A plagiarism detector.
Yeah. So what I have to do is I have to translate um, scientific speech into regular people speech when I'm
Hmm.
when I'm looking at all these different studies. Um, that can sometimes be hard to do, and sometimes in the course of trying to make sure I have the facts right, I will use certain phrases kind of directly from whatever the source was.
Hmm.
And it's not intentional. It's just like that's the phrase that's in my head. And when I get to writing, I just kind of zip it out.
Okay.
But that is technically plagiarism if I haven't cited it.
All right.
So I run it through like a college paper plagiarism detector to make sure that I haven't done that without citing something.
How is
Um,
that possible? How can they? I mean, how can I mean if they like electronic put every book or writing it electronic somewhere, or is it just to compare against what is known out there that's been recorded?
I am not totally certain, but I can tell you I did a blog post on something once, and one of the magazines I wrote for said, "Hey, would you expand this into a longer article?" And I said, "Sure."
Hmm.
And I ran it through the plagiarism checker, and it came up as me having plagiarized myself because apparently I phrase things the same way the second time I wrote it as well.
Wow, there you go.
So the
Cheating off
fact that
yourself.
it found my little obscure blog post
Hmm.
on the internet somewhere, um,
Wow.
and that was several years ago. I mean, people have only recently kind of gone off the deep end about the whole AI thing, but the
Hmm.
fact is, everyone out there has been benefiting from it for a very
Hmm.
long time and just didn't pay attention.
Yeah. All right. Well, nobody. We had one guess about a spine, but what is this that we're looking at?
So you're close. It is a spine. Um, does anyone want to guess what it's from?
Say a duck.
Good guess. It's a Muscovy, but
Oh,
it is.
I was thinking it's the red-billed duck that you showed last week at the end of the show.
Yep,
I was picturing that thing. I couldn't remember its name, but yes,
yep, it's a Muscovy.
yes. All right.
Um, so this is what a Muscovy looks like, and the reason for all of the little gaps and the holes is that that's what keeps things. And you can't really see it in this picture, but it's incredibly fragile and incredibly lightweight, and that's what allows them to fly.
Mm,
Um,
wow.
and it has layers and layers and layers of muscles over it to protect it in case predator attacks or whatever. But the bone itself is actually incredibly fragile.
It looks like it. It looks very thin. It does. It, but it does look like a solid bird when you see it in real life, though.
Yeah, the males. I mean, the males especially. The males can't even fly. They are so big and so dense that yeah, they can climb though. I have seen. So they have an extra toe. That's one of the reasons that they are scientifically not ducks,
Oh, wow.
which allows them to grab things. Um,
Interesting.
and I have watched one climb a 6-foot fence.
Climb a fence. Wow.
Yep, just
That's
hooked right on, climbed itself up over, hit the top, and they can kind of glide with their wings. So
well. Our bear is not impressed with the birds, so realized it was some bird lightweight. Oh, nice, nice there. Thank you for sharing that. I do want to get folks. If you have questions, please feel free to ask. We'll get what we can in here. But Legatus actually earlier on asked, "How long have you been writing and writing about food? Why food?"
um, well, let's see. How long have I been writing? So I started editing 15 years ago ish, maybe a little longer. And I started editing the newsletter for a small business that was in the town I grew up in. Um, they had a staffing shortage, and so I kind of unofficially took over doing some of their articles for a while. But that was just kind of a just because thing.
Hmm.
I then kind of got out of the writing, mainly because first I was in grad school and then I was working in hospitals. And by the time you get done doing notes on 75 patients, you don't really want to write anything else.
Right.
Um, and then when I decided to get out of the mental health field, so I already had the homestead. Um, I was already doing a little bit of writing at that point because I was doing educational work, writing stuff up for people about the endangered heritage breed animals that I raise. Um, and then there were instances at work, there were instances with my health. And I decided I needed to take some time off from the field. Um, and I was like, well, I'm just going to do the homesteading, except homesteading is really seasonal. And I got really bored. And so I just started writing more and more and more. And I was getting articles accepted by different magazines. And I really love it. So, um, And as far as food,
Yep.
originally the food thing was kind of a gradient thing. I was writing about heritage breed animals, and the number one way you get people to care about something not going extinct is to convince people that it's tasty. Um, I needed new article ideas. There were magazines that didn't do livestock or didn't primarily do livestock, so I started talking about bees, and that got into gardening, um, and then it just, there were just a couple of cases where they were like, "Hey, we'd kind of like, do you know any good recipes for this? Because we kind of like." I actually just got an email just before we came on. There was an editor that said, "I'd like an article for next Thanksgiving about how you cook heritage breed turkeys,
Hmm.
because you cook them differently from um, production turkeys because they have a lot less fat on them."
Right.
Um, and she said, "Can you do that?" I was like, "Sure." Um, so it's just one of those things that when you write about gardening and you write about homesteading and you write about how to be self-sufficient. There are a lot of people that just don't, they're like, okay, I've learned how to garden, but now what do I do with this stuff? How do I preserve it? How do I
Right.
can? How do I dry it? How do I cook with it? I don't want to have white sugar in my diet anymore, but I don't know how to transfer
Hmm.
to using honey or maple syrup. And
Yeah.
so it's just kind of a natural progression.
Hmm.
Yeah, and because food is yummy. Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
exactly. The simplest answer sometimes. Yeah, I think that's fascinating. I know you talk about canning and stuff. My wife's done that a bit. It's been very, very interesting to see. But one of the what you mentioned heritage breeds. By the way, earlier this week, May 17th was International Heritage Breeds Day.
It is. And the first Saturday in October, I think it is.
Hmm.
Let me think. I think June is Heritage Breed Month, and then the first Saturday in October is nationally recognized San Clemente Island Goat Day.
Oh wow. Okay, that's
Um,
it is specific, but folks, there is a day of the year for everything in the world. We
there is.
joked about it on Mrs. Shows in the morning. She talks about the joke has been and no unicorn day, whatever. If you can think of a day, there's a day somewhere. But yes, absolutely,
So,
yeah. Because
so
when you mentioned that, I thought about that International Breeds Day. So okay.
anyone want to guess what this is?
Uh,
I'll give you a hint. It is a variation on a very common herb.
let's see. It's got purple in it, right?
Hmm.
Um,
It is, in fact, my favorite herb. Not necessarily this version, but
right. Let's see. God. Oh gosh, now snore poop is National Day for things that don't have days day. Um, these comes out with great things. Not cilantro. That's probably not.
now I have that gene that makes cilantro taste like soap.
Ooh, ow, oh, that's a talent. So,
I
Missy.
also have I also have the gene that is prone to taint.
Oh, okay. That sounds awkwardly bad. Uh,
Yeah,
Miss
it just
said
means if
rhubarb
if
not
if
correct.
anybody attempts to cook an old intact boar or ram, it smells to me like rotting meat,
Ugh,
and I
okay.
have to leave the room.
Uh, uh,
Smells totally. Only 20% of people or something like that have that gene. So like to everyone else, it smells and tastes fine. I can't be in the same room.
okay. Well, that's like me with eggs. You boil eggs, I gotta leave. Just my mom. Just
See,
it's a childhood thing.
that's interesting. I did not know for years that eggs even had a smell
Yeah.
until people started complaining that I brought boiled eggs in my lunch. And I was like, why? What's wrong with eggs? And they're like, because of the smell. And I'm like, what smell?
Yeah. Mrs. loves it. I love deviled eggs and all that. And I'm like, please just get away because you can smell it. And I think like anything though, if you like it, you like it. You don't notice it because you like the smell. You don't
No,
make
I
a big deal.
literally
It's there.
I literally do not smell anything when I boil eggs.
Wow.
Unless
Well.
they're overboiled.
Hmm.
Um, but normally, if you have correctly boiled eggs, I smell nothing.
That's what I hear. That's what I hear. But when my mom boiled eggs as a kid, it smelled like sulfur water. It was like it just I never got it. So, oh yes, thank you. You reminded me. She's got the boiled eggs in the fridge. Uh, yeah, I would
So,
say
do we have
Miss.
any
She
guesses?
doesn't. She doesn't smell them either. I swear I've seen that. So, oh, see,
It's the
this is what
shape of
happens
the.
here. This
If
is
you
what
have a
happens here. We go into squirrel. Everybody starts talking about eggs on the side of the road. All right.
if you have a gardener, they might recognize the shape of the leaf. That was the.
Well, it looks like a vermilion to me, but that's not a gart. That's not a an ingredient or
This is cinnamon basil.
a basil. Okay, so cinnamon basil. Oh, interesting.
Um,
Oh, Mrs. had
there
said parsley, but yeah,
there
basil.
are there are actually so there's only like two varieties that you will normally find in stores or food
Hmm.
in the United States, but there are actually up to like 130 different varieties of basil. Um, and this one is literally a sweeter basil. Um, if you cook it in your food, it literally gives it a little bit of a cinnamony flavor,
Hmm.
as well as the basil flavor. So
Hmm.
two
Yeah,
spices for the price of one.
there you go. There you go. Yeah, Mrs. I think talking about some of the ones she likes out there. So we got more. Now, let's see. I got one more starter comment. Racerheads earlier said, "Goat must cringe when I message her because I can never be bothered to use proper grammar when I'm immobile."
So I used to work with doctors. Let me tell you,
Yeah.
no grammar, no readable handwriting, no nothing.
Nope.
It's yeah. And honestly, like I always joke all the time, it's a good thing that I don't edit on my cell phone because I cannot type worth crap on my cell phone.
Right.
Um, and the keyboard is going, so that makes it even worse. It was kind of funny though. So I put up a post saying, hey, I'm almost done on my editing projects. I'm looking for more work if anybody has anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and somebody messaged me and they claimed to be from the same state I was, but like there was a structural thing, like they were wording sentences funny. And
Mm-hmm.
I kind of went, I wonder if this is a scam.
Right.
And they said, I saw your post from this date, and uh, you have an error. You used this instead of this. And, if you would like help editing your posts or blogs with your business, I can help you. And I was like, well, that's kind of entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but, I had done it on my phone. So I was like, it's possible that, I made an error. But if I made a editing error in an editing post, that would be very embarrassing. So I went back and looked, and he was totally wrong on what he'd said was wrong with the post.
Right. Yep.
Either that or he read the post wrong, in
Yep.
which case that's still not a sign of a good editor.
Nope. Nope.
Um, so I still don't know if it was a scam or if it was just somebody who was a very bad editor who was trying to like pawn themselves off as being an editor.
Right. Well, I got several DMs today telling me that they noticed my resume out there. It looks so great, but I like help finding a job, and I'm laughing like, no. So you can't be too careful with scams. And to Eraserhead's point, that's me when I use voice chat. When I message my
Mm-hmm.
wife or other people, we call it. We've actually given it an official name. It's a language to this channel called Dadmanese because it goes all over the place. Words and phrases that you would laugh about, but actually, people have gotten good about interpreting what I've been saying. So it's a talent. So oh yeah, next we're gonna tell him there's hot babes and there's no hot babes in this area. All right, what have we got here
There,
now?
there may be there may be hot babes in your area, Eraserhead. They're just not looking for you.
Oh no. Oh my. Oh no, it's so bad. Okay, so what do we got? We got we got a sheep here, correct?
Nope, this is a goat.
It's a goat. Ah, dang it. 50-50, I missed it.
Well,
Now,
so
is this
there's a reason because I always tell you that sheep horns are curly and goat horns are, flat and
right?
straight.
But is this a horn?
This getting back to the why I started writing. One of the things that I started writing about the most at first is that I have a great soapbox tendency when it comes to people who disbud their goats.
Mm-hmm.
I am very anti-disbudding, and I try really hard to hold my temper and talk to people about it in reasonable ways.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit last week.
yep.
Yeah.
But I write a lot about the dangers of disbudding and the things that can happen when you disbud. So one of the things that's very common, like far more common than some of the stuff I write about, is that in males,
Mm-hmm.
their horns do not want to be repressed. Um, and so they develop what you call skurs, which are horns that try to grow in where the skull has been burned, but they're brittle, they grow in weird places, they grow in weird directions, they cause the goat a fair amount of pain. They break easily. Um, I have a female goat who was improperly disbudded. So normally I don't
Right.
bring disbudded goats in at all. But I
Mm-hmm.
felt really bad for her. So and I shouldn't have brought her in because she's the only goat without horns. Um, but she's big, and so the head goat in my horned herd took a disliking to her and started headbutting her all the time. And
Hmm.
because she has skurs, her skurs break every time she gets into this headbutting competition,
Oh
and
wow.
it causes her a lot of pain. I think that it has actually caused her some brain damage.
Oh no.
Um, and things have been really rough for her. So I finally, once she had a daughter and a granddaughter, I have put them in their own field. But I don't, like I said, I think she's already suffered
Hmm.
some issues. So these now understand this was at a goat show. So these are the goats that people felt were willing to bring out into public, despite the fact that they had these terrible um, I don't even know what to call it, maimings, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, this is a limb. So basically, what they have attempted to do is burn off a limb, and it is now grown back deformed.
Hmm. Wow.
And what you can't see in this picture is that it's pressing into the bridge of his nose like really hard.
Right. And
Um,
this is a result of the
dis,
debudding, right?
disbudding, yep.
Disbudding.
Um,
Okay.
and he was very, very happy to get scratches because apparently it really itched too.
Hmm. No.
Um,
Because, like you said, it's actually growing into the brain too, inside, inwards, not just outwards, right?
In his case, no.
Okay.
You get different effects with different goats. So this is where there's more horn trying to grow through and isn't capable, which causes
Oh,
this lump.
okay.
And then you have
Okay.
this piece to the horn which is growing, but it's constantly rubbing against this, and so it bleeds constantly. Like you can
Ooh,
see where it
wow.
keeps trying
Okay.
to scab over.
Right.
Um,
Hmm. Poor thing.
um, This was one where the disbudding obviously went very badly because these aren't even skurs; these are just deformed horns.
Wow. Wow.
Um, and I can't remember what the statistics are, but it's something like 60% of people in the United States that disbud were not actually trained. They either taught themselves or like a relative was like, "Here, this is how I do it."
Mm-hmm.
In the UK, dehorning has to be done by a vet under anesthesia, and disbudding has to be done by a vet.
Okay. That which would
Um,
seem reasonable if
with
it's being done,
with
but
with a lot of painkillers.
right.
And here we do it with no painkillers and a hot iron with somebody on a farm.
Gotcha. Yeah. Man.
Um, so on to more positive notes.
Yeah. All right. We like positive. So, Let me go back. We got a couple more questions that came in
Sure.
for this. Okay. So Legatus is asking, when the younger next generation is not being able to read, write at grade level, using slang texting, why is it so important for proper grammar when they just auto AI text to speech?
When the next
Oh,
I
grasp, crochet. Sorry, go ahead.
I think there are probably a few answers to that. I mean, one is that if you're writing something that is supposed to be scholarly, which I mean, the magazines aren't scientific; they're not using this, scientific jargon, but they are supposed to be scholarly. They are supposed to be teaching for the people who are interested. Um, I think those are people that aren't going to be using a ton of slang, um, and they're going to expect things to be written well. I also am a firm believer that words are really important, and
Mm-hmm.
that part of the reason with our society currently is that we are losing the meaning of a lot of words.
Right.
There are literally people that use words and don't understand either they actually don't know what the definition of the word is, um, or it has been used so commonly in another way that it's just kind of lost all meaning. Um,
Hmm.
you
Yeah,
know,
I agree. I noticed that too with a lot of the younger people. Sometimes they just repeat what's said, and also a lot more slang. Because I'll tell you what, one of the things that I have business writing is I'm trying to work with these young people. Like, do not when we do a narrative about what people do or something, do not just call them John or Jane or whatever. You call them Mr. or Mrs. and last name in the text in the narrative that you're writing. To me, that's old, not just old school. It's polite. It's respectful. Even if they don't see it, it brings an air of formality and respect to the writing. Whereas a lot of people just very casually like Jane or John, and I'm like, it doesn't even read right. It doesn't read as it doesn't have a professional tone to me. Maybe it's just me being old and uh, picky. But I tell you what, when you do correct some people on that, they get mad at you.
so be it. Let them
I
get
know,
mad at
but
me.
it's like I'm just trying to teach you how we were taught. It's a form of respect. You use the last name until you're told otherwise. But like, especially when you're doing a formal narrative or something, you can refer to their job function or the Mr. and Mrs. last name. Not just John does. John runs checks and Gene. Because it just. But it does. It looks different in the text that you read. It
It's
does.
also the fact is too that most of the people hiring for jobs are going to be older people.
Hmm.
Um, so the I guess the best way I can put it is early on in my career, I worked in a residential home for teenagers
Hmm.
who had criminal backgrounds and substance use issues, and they had to take their hats off in the house. They had to wear button-down shirts. They had to tuck their shirts in. And somebody asked once, "Why do we have to do this? We're going to get out of here. We're never going to do this again." And the answer they were given was twofold. They said, number one, someday you're going to go for a job interview. And if the first time you ever put on a button down shirt and a tie and tuck your shirt in is for that interview, you're going to be uncomfortable. It's going to feel weird. It's going to feel different. And it's going to be very obvious in that interview that you are really uncomfortable. On the other hand, if you're used to how it feels, then that's one less thing you have to worry about during the job interview. And the other thing is because it gives you options. Yes, you may walk out of here, you may never wear a button down shirt again, you may never tuck your shirt in again. But now you have the choice.
Yeah.
You are no longer stuck in this way of thinking that says this is how I dress. This is what I look like. This is my identity.
Hmm.
Now you have spent 6 months dressing and feeling and looking a different way. You know what that's like, and now you have a choice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good answer. Yeah, I noticed the next generations. Yeah, it's very different. Canadian Spider Man says, "I wonder if Goat gets called the Electric Goat much." Uh,
Very frequently.
I think I've called you that a few times on accident. It's just so.
It's very common. It's an ongoing joke.
Yes, exactly. Well, I'm going to let you. Oh gosh, snort poop is with the comedy. Put Babe in the oven bit. Voila, hot Babe.
Somebody else had a
Uh,
question too, didn't they?
yes, I Legatus does too. But I wanted to. Do you want to take it now, or did you want to talk about what you got here first?
No, go ahead. Go ahead with the question.
Okay, because this is the hot button question that even I have.
One,
Because all these kids, oh God, they cut me off before. Okay, well, hey, see, we grew up in two periods back in my day,
because there were typewriters.
and
It was
that's
necessary with typewriters. It is not necessary with computers.
well, what
Adapt and overcome. Technology changes. We have to change with it.
well, tell that to my bosses because they insist on the two spaces. One day, somebody had to go through an entire report and put two spaces in to undo the one space. It's yeah,
Do a search and replace function. It's way faster.
well, I know, but we got to find it all because it's still
No, no, no.
it's
Literally, like you
yeah.
can literally use
Oh yeah,
search and replace to just in 5 seconds change all the
yeah, I
spaces
know.
to.
I don't know if they figured out how to do that or not, but apparently they did it the hard way. But either way, the whole point, most of our younger people are like, you guys need to get with it because it's one space. And for the very
I
reason my wife has
no,
said that it's about typewriters.
yeah, no. I am not younger. I actually the first time I ever typed was on a typewriter.
Oh, you kidding me? No, I thought you were in your 30s, early
Oh God,
30s.
no.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, you are.
when I keep saying I'm old, I'm not I'm serious. I am
Huh?
not. No.
Well, I know.
I
All
no,
right.
I learned on a typewriter and then a
Yep.
word processor and then a computer. But the
Yep.
fact is that if you're going to write and it may be, the other thing is that it may be different in your profession. I mean, there are professional differences that people format things in different ways. Um, but as far as just straight writing goes, it's one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I were
No.
coding or
Yeah.
something, it might be different. I have no idea. I don't code.
I Yeah, I just like I said, this has been a big battle at our office, but so for the two
Now,
space, and I'm taught the old way, so I'm still stuck with the two because they're going to change it to two, even if we want to do one. It doesn't matter. The a vote that's one of those cases where the boss trumps grammar rules. So,
now the much bigger one is
hmm
the Oxford comma.
which is that?
The Oxford comma is if you have a sentence where you say Johnny and Sarah and Karen went to the beach.
Hmm
Do you put a comma before the word and? That is an Oxford comma.
Okay, that yeah, there's all these rules you think of that I'm like, my brain gets.
Uh, so the Oxford
So,
comma is for a long time the Oxford comma in America was a no-no.
hmm
And then somebody figured out that yes, buddy, your university is correct. By current standards.
yes,
That may
that.
change. That's the other thing to keep in mind.
Hmm
That may change next week.
Oh yeah.
Um, because these things are like where to use commas is constantly changing, how to cite sources is constantly changing. Um, and sometimes it varies from editor to editor. Like some use Chicago style, some use APA style, some use
hmm
AP style. It can be very confusing when when you're working for multiple editors.
Oh, I bet.
Um,
I bet. I was actually
um,
fortunate. I was a business major. Took an English class, and at the time, MLA was the big citation source. And but the English professor was so happy having an accounting major in her class, upper level English class. She's like, "You can write APA," so because that's what I would
um,
use.
the other thing that's fun is I am currently starting work on a project for somebody that is out of the UK.
Hmm
Anyone want to guess why that's fun?
You have the URs, the different spellings with common
Yeah.
between the
Spell the word
English and
spell the word gray.
um, GREY or
If you're in England, yes.
if English, yeah. So, but over here it's
So
GRAY. Yeah.
so now I have one project in England currently going and 3 going in America, and they all have to have different spellings.
Yes. See, yeah, gray. Yeah.
Armor is spelled differently, theater is spelled differently, um,
It's
gray is
theater,
spelled
but my wife
huh?
loves it when I call it the theater. She's like, it's a
Yeah,
what? It's
color,
just,
flavor.
yeah, exactly.
Um, Now the upside is that when I was a kid, my grandparents watched me a lot, and my grandfather would help me with my homework. And he was from England, and I
Okay.
and I failed so many spelling tests as a kid.
Oh boy. Yeah.
But and I still actually will spell gray GREY sometimes. Um,
Yeah.
so it is less difficult for me than most to have to kind of reorient my brain that way, but it would
No.
probably be easier if I didn't have multiple projects going.
No, I know. That's the thing is what rules apply. Like you said, if I'm writing for England, here's one. If I'm going for another country, yeah. If I'm doing a
Yeah,
business trade
exactly.
like this, if I'm doing pleasure or it's all over the place. Legatus does ask, when should one use the ampersand instead of and?
When you're on Twitter and you have a limited number of characters.
There you go. All right, I love it. I find myself with that daggone problem all the time. I'm having to do that all the time because I'm not paying to be verified. So, um,
I have thought about it because I do tend to be wordy.
mm,
But one of the things I struggle with in writing is that I tend to be wordy and I put words where I don't really need them.
mm-hmm,
And strangely enough, Twitter has actually really helped with that because I've had to go back so many times and clip things down and try and figure out how to make my sentences shorter.
mm-hmm.
It's actually been very useful in cutting out deadwood in my writing.
Oh, that's good. Do you learn from it? Yeah, it's like I tell some friends and all. I struggle with writing. I try to. Mrs. will tell you I'm very, very verbose, even when I'm not using voice chat, and I use a lot of unnecessary words. It's just I don't know how I go, how I function, because usually what I do when I'm doing business writing, or even if I have to send a letter, I brainstorm. I just put what comes in, I write it out, and then what I do is I try to go back, edit and proofread, and get out, focus on what's important, what's irrelevant. I'm always like I tell people, they're like, well, what's or why did it take so long to respond? Because what I really hate is when people want to have serious conversations or important things in writing. Because I'm a firm believer. Sometimes you pick up the phone, call people, resolve issues. I think that would clear up a lot of miscommunications. Because I hate the written English word because I think it's bad for tone and other factors that could lead to miscommunications and misunderstandings. So
So there
I'm always writing and editing down my words, looking for tone and stuff, especially in business writing, but even more on Twitter.
so there that helps to a certain extent. But the fact is that human beings here's one of my little psych facts.
Mm-hmm.
Human beings in general get only 10% of their communication from words.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Most of our, like 90% of our communication is done through tone and body language.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons that doing so much communication on social media leads to so much ugliness because somebody can write something that's just, a perfectly neutral statement. But especially if you're having a bad day, your brain will read it with an inflection that says they're being sarcastic or they're being mean or they're being
Mm-hmm.
insulting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not their fault and it's not your fault. That is literally just the way we're hardwired.
Right.
Um, but so then you say something snippy back and they're like, what the hell, dude? And they don't say what the
Mm-hmm.
hell, dude. You know,
No.
they
Oh
just
yeah, it
go,
gets
wow,
worse.
they just say this guy's a dick. Pardon me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had problems tonight. And
And
hey, nerd takes, good to see you tonight.
and
But
and
yeah,
now it's and now it's on.
Yeah, and see, and that's the thing is so much could be avoided if you just pick up the phone and talk to somebody with that. Because one of the things that we do also, and what we do, is we look interview people for nonverbal clues and communications. You know, an auditor is out to not responsible to find fraud, but we're supposed to look and see. You know, we're supposed to be aware of the potential presence. And one of the big things in our training is that people's mannerisms, their body language, how they dress, what they drive, all those are things that you can pick up in communication. But
Hmm.
but I tell you, so many friendships have been busted because they wanted everything in writing. And of course, I'm not going to get into the damn introvert extrovert crap here, but I mean, people, I don't write well, and I am one of those that misreads the tone. Either the way I write it comes off wrong, or I don't get. I cannot tell you how many times people have had to explain to me, even my own wife, what was said because I read it differently than if I heard it said to me. I would have
Hmm.
taken it a completely different way.
Yeah. Um, and again, that's just, it's going to be affected by your mood. It's going to be affected by what you're expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not, and it's one of the reasons that writing nonfiction is in some ways harder, because you have to make things interesting. You have to be engaged with your audience, but you have to be neutral.
Mm-hmm.
And like every time I have to write an article about goat horns,
Mm-hmm.
like I have to do the pros and the cons. And it is so hard for me not to just to write in there like here's all the pros to disbudding and they're all bullshit.
Right. Right. Oh yeah,
Um
yeah, because you had to, get it, fair
well,
because
cuz
you're
I have
writing
to
a,
I have to give
yeah,
the facts, and it doesn't matter if I agree with them or not.
right.
I mean, the facts are some goats will stick their heads through a cattle panel and get stuck.
Yep.
Some of them will stick their heads through a cattle panel, and in the effort to not get stuck, they will break their own neck.
Yep.
Those are things that happen.
Mm-hmm.
My reaction to that is, hey, it's called a cattle panel for a reason. Get a better fence.
Yep. Well,
Um, and if your goat breaks its own neck because it's,
okay, buddy.
yes, that is the
Yeah.
reason for the Oxford comma.
Oh, the this one comment. Yeah, snort poopus. Let's eat grandma versus let's eat grandma versus let's eat grandma. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
we love that. And Rachel has the same problem. People misread tone all the time. Exactly. So I understand. So yeah, and being too awesome it can be a problem sometimes, CJ. That's for sure. Especially
Yeah.
with two
By the
awesome
way,
people. Yeah, go ahead.
CJ said earlier that the ampersand is also used in movie titles. Marketing is the other common place that you find it.
Okay.
But if you're writing an article or paper or something like that, you don't ever want to use it.
Right. Okay. Let's see. Atwood said earlier, or some formalities have changed, like ma'am is not used like it used to be taught to say sir, ma'am, but not the usual case anymore. And sometimes it depends on your region, I get also,
Yeah, I was gonna say I think that's a regional thing.
Yeah, exactly. It definitely can happen. But I mean, even down here, and where it's always been expected, it's not always the same. Uh, so, like I said, so how should it go? Tom, comma, and Dick, comma, and Harry. Tom and Dick and Harry. Tom, comma, Dick. Which one is it of the? God,
Well,
he
this is one of those
yeah,
cases where I said it's really dependent on the editor. So the first one is always wrong. The second one is
okay,
always wrong.
right,
Well, no, the second one is almost always wrong. There are very, very rare cases that you would do that.
okay,
Um, the third one will be right to some editors, and the fourth one will be right to some editors. And the
okay.
fifth one is only right if you're doing a movie title. And I don't know why we've gone from Harry to Harold.
I don't either, but hey, yeah,
I think he was just trying to. I think he was just trying to throw in a sixth one.
I'm big with that comma before the and though, but that's been the way we
Well,
write
but but
our
but for
stuff.
but for a long time, that was considered a no-no.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like with the example about let's eat grandma, somebody figured out that without that comma, you're really changing the grammatical structure of a bunch of sentences.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
the other example I find a lot is help Jack off the horse versus help Jack off the horse.
Yes, yes. Hey, we're 18 plus. Hey, but seriously, how many times have you seen stuff not phrased properly or not have that punctuation, uh, and you're like, yeah, you just can't help but think about that. But yeah, exactly.
Well, and that's one of the other things. Like that's the downside to the character limit in Twitter is that
Mm-hmm.
people tend to just skip their grammar. They skip the punctuation.
Right,
Except, again, you can totally change the structure of a sentence depending on what your brain puts in for commas.
right,
You can make a
absolutely.
sentence that's totally neutral if you put the commas in one place, but you put the commas in a different place and it's really accusatory.
Yep,
So,
yep. Talk about tone and everything else. Yeah, you
yeah,
can.
this is so when I do editing, there are a lot of people that are really nervous about editors because they say, I don't want my story changed. Now,
Mm-hmm.
a publisher might change your story. An
Right.
editor should never change your story. I mean, I'm not going to say they never will because there are some terrible editors out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Now, changing the story versus changing the writing. I mean,
well, so first of all, I never change anything. I make notes
mm-hmm.
because for instance, there might be something that I think is a spelling error, but it's an intentional spelling error on the part of the author. Like if they're
Right,
doing dialogue and they want something to be slangy or
right.
they want to get a point about the person that's narrating. The narrator may have a particular quirk in their speech. I don't know that. So I don't want to change what they intended. So what I do
Mm-hmm.
is just make a note and say, did you mean this instead of
Right,
this?
right.
If it's a comma issue, I'll just fix it.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times I will highlight it and I will say, you know, this appears to be wrong. Um, because I don't want to change anything.
Mm-hmm.
So proofreading is literally I go through and I check the punctuation, I check the grammar. Um, and then there is line editing, which is closer to what people worry about. Most of that is things like you started out the book saying Harry, and by the end you were calling him Harold.
Right.
And that's because they changed the name partway through and they just missed spots. Um, I did an alpha read line edit for somebody recently where they had a date wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it messed up the timeline of the whole book.
Ooh, yeah.
Um,
Well, we
like
even in
that's
our business writing, we do our reports. We sit there, we do it, we do all the work. Then we got other managers up above coming in, and they start changing stuff left and right because based on what they think they read and understand, and it's like, then you got to go fix it and change everything back or educate them on what it should be. It's very frustrating when you've invested that time. You've written it for a specific reason. Um,
well, but the
I,
fact is sometimes people are just wrong. I mean,
yeah,
especially if you're writing, so it's different for you and I. You and I are writing nonfiction stuff.
right.
You know, A is always going to equal A. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're writing fiction, they may have a vision in their head. You know, it was a dark night, the ground was wet, you know, there was a mist in the air. They may have a particular vision, but the way they've written it does not make that vision clear to the person who's reading. It's
Mm-hmm.
perfectly clear to them because they wrote it.
Right.
But line editing is also about I don't really understand what you're trying to convey in this scene.
Right. And see
It can
that's effective like what we deal with. I prefer it when somebody leaves me a comment or a question saying, what are you trying to say here? Versus going ahead and changing the whole meaning around and it's not what we not even close, with the support and everything else. Because then you got to go educate them. Then you got to fix it, you know, if they agree with you, because I like the style, like you said, where you're just making notes and asking questions. I think that can help go a long way to keeping out frustration in the writing process, especially, if you're
Well,
coming
but
up on a deadline.
the fact is though that, if I send it, and this is where people get confused because the person who runs the magazines I write for are called editors, where in fact what they really are publishers.
Right.
Um, if the publisher looks at my article, so I've had this happen twice. Um, I sent in articles, and in one case they said, we need to cut this to X number of words. We don't have space. Do you
Mm-hmm.
want us to do it, or do you want us to send it back to you and you make the cuts? Fine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was another case where they said, hey, we really love this article, but the last paragraph is too depressing. We're cutting it.
Right.
And I said,
Mm.
well, the last paragraph is the entire point of the article. And they're like, yeah, don't care. It's depressing. We don't, it doesn't matter if it's real. It doesn't matter if it's the point of the article. It doesn't matter if it's what farming is actually about. It's depressing, and we don't do anything negative here. So we're going to cut it.
Yep.
Um, and the fact is that she's still the boss. Like, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter what I say. They bought the article. I'm under contract. Part of that contract is they get to make changes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
it
I
doesn't
mean,
matter.
even like in my situation, we have bosses. They're at a higher level. No matter what I say at the end of the day, they get the final say because they're the ones in charge. Effectively, they buy it, because they have that level of authority. So whether you do it directly, like you in your case, where somebody's buying the article, or even in management where you're working as part of a hierarchy, you got to learn to. It's going
Yep,
to change.
the boss is the boss at the end of the day.
Well, I had one guy get mad
CJ,
at me. Yeah. Okay. Which one?
I was just gonna say, CJ, it wasn't that they were looking for a word count. I had done the word count they asked for, but they had a problem in the structuring that I think somebody who'd given them advertising, the advertisement was too big,
Mm-hmm.
and there was no way for them to cut it. So they it was literally a spacing issue. It was a layout issue, not a word count issue.
He left being digital artists, just charge bosses for additional changes. Hey, there you go. That's the way to do it. But what I had with case, we had one young guy. He's like, I don't want to be micromanaged. I don't know. And I looked at him across the and said, get over yourself. I've been here 30 years.
Legatus,
Micromanaging is part of life. Yeah,
yeah.
Legatus had a couple questions here I wanted to get to. I do want to get some questions though after we take these from Legatus though.
Hmm.
When it comes to people talking quotations, is it when a new person talks, or is it a new paragraph, or since it's the same topic, they stay in the same paragraph?
It's a new paragraph because paragraphs are not topics; they are thoughts. Every paragraph is a new thought, and when you have a different person, you automatically have a new thought.
Right. And he said that he's seen some published works where they don't start a new paragraph. In his opinion, it sometimes gets confusing who is talking when they go on and on.
Yeah, they're wrong.
Yep. There you go.
Now, one of my pet peeves is there are people who will say, "You've got Jane and John talking." Jane
Mm-hmm.
says, "Yada yada yada." John grimaces, "Yada yada yada yada." Jane whispers, "Yada yada yada." No, just you don't have to have a descriptor every time. Once you have established that Jane is going first and John is going second, you can have long chunks where you literally just have them going back and forth before you have to put another thing. And when every single paragraph is a new verb, it's very distracting.
Gotcha. Yeah. I'm one of those bad writers that ends. Was it a ly and was it not an adjective?
Adverbs,
Adverb. I
you're
end up
heavy
on
on the adverbs.
adverbs. Yep. And everybody's like, stop it, stop it.
Uh,
Also,
that's
we.
that's another common thing, an overuse of adverbs and adjectives. So adjectives are wrong because if there are too many of them, they're really distracting.
Mm-hmm.
I've known people that could not write a noun that didn't have two adjectives stuck to it. And it
Yeah.
just means it means you don't have faith in your own writing.
All right.
And adverbs, when they're used too heavily, mean that your means that your verb is too passive.
And see that we have a big debate as a passive versus active writing. But then again, as much as we try to be active, half the time the traditional culture it takes us back into passive language instead of active, and it's like you're stuck in these two worlds. Like, which one do I do? I know I should write actively, but you keep getting pulled back into passive. And what's the difference between active and passive voice for people that don't know the difference?
Um, I knew this question was going to come up. I could see it coming, and I was trying to think of an example, and um,
Well, while
uh,
you're thinking,
Jane,
Snortopoopas said here.
Jane
Hmm?
Jane was spinning is passive because you can just as easily say Jane spun.
Hmm. Yeah.
When you
Fewer words,
so
also. Yeah.
and that's part of what makes something passive versus active. So if you are, I I had an editor that used to refer to it as backing into your subject. If you're
Okay.
beating around the bush about what you're trying to say, it's
Right.
passive. And it's difficult for me because I there is just a tendency to want to have lead-ins to things, especially in the way women are learned to this, it's just a gender difference in how we're
Hmm.
raised. Women are taught to like sort of tentatively ease into topics. Counselors are also taught to tentatively ease into
Hmm.
topics. When you have an 800 word count, you can't ease into something. You just got to jump in with both feet.
Right.
Um, and that's one of the reasons that cutting words is really important. Anything with was in it is almost always passive. The
Right.
other thing I'm really guilty of, but getting much better, is I tend to put the word that in places it doesn't need to be.
Yep. Like is one that I use, even in verbal communication.
It's
It's
more common in verbal
yeah.
communication, actually.
But and sometimes it's nervous habit. Like you said, there's a lack
Hmm.
of confidence, and sometimes in the writing, that's the way it is. Like it's been the biggest thing with us with work is like they've had courses, had trainers coming in about active language, use active. But the thing is, at the end of the day, we still go back to passive. I wonder what my wife is like. Quit being passive aggressive because, or quit beating around the bush. Get to the point. But I'm like, it's kind of work hazard habits. I'm beating around the bush again. It, very a lot of truth in what you're saying there with that. Um, the snore poop
Winston,
says, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, I thought you were going for the one underneath it.
Okay, but split infinities were big no-no. Then Star Trek made them almost acceptable. Yeah, that's part of the culture taking as a fact. Okay, so then when Winston Churchill was chastised for ending a sentence with a preposition, he wittily responded, "This is the type of errant pedantry up with which I will not put."
Yeah, Winston Churchill, like, he was the master of the word. He was master of wit. Like, I wish I still had them. My grandmother used to have all of his books.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, his ability, I mean, his ability to burn was legendary. But a lot of that was because he was just so good with words.
Yeah. Definitely different. So, folks, we got time still with more questions. If you want to, for the Eclectic Goat, let's do this. I'm going to hold Legatus's next question because I do want to get the greatest martini he did. I want to get into this, which I had planned last time, which we never got. Da da da. Standard feature we got here of uh, the chilling with guest. All right, it's what I call the lightning round,
Oh Lord,
but
I'm not good on a time limit.
don't worry, it's when I did it with Tomby, it took forever. It happens. It's theoretically a lightning round, but hey, it's designed for one or two word answers or a short phrase. But of course, if you got to clarify, clarify.
I
It's
was gonna
okay.
say, have you been listening to me? One or two word answers does not does not work well.
That's okay. That's okay. I know some people do live with them, and we love these key pictures. Are you ready?
I mean, as ready as I'm gonna be.
All right. What is your favorite food?
Uh, I don't have one.
Okay. When you
I
do
mean, I
go
can
out,
I can
yeah,
explain, but you said to keep it short,
go,
so
okay, okay, yes, explain that because I'm like, okay, usually somebody like hamburgers or vegetable. Why? Okay, why?
because it's entirely driven by mood. Um,
Oh,
it's so normally psychology will tell you that if somebody's really angry, they will eat crunchy foods.
mm-hmm.
I, on the other hand, eat red meat.
Ooh, yeah, my wife would
Um,
like hanging out with you then. When she was
um,
pregnant with our oldest kid, she ate ribs all the time. So,
um, I the time of day makes a difference. Here's a weird one for you. Earlier in the day, I prefer spicy food.
mm-hmm.
Um, I can't stand spicy food if I'm drinking alcohol, though.
Oh, wow, okay.
Um, and so there's just a tremendous amount of. I'm also far more texture driven than taste driven. Like the very few things that I will not eat are either due to food allergies or because I can't stand the texture. There is nothing I don't like the taste of that I won't eat if it's put in front of me.
I'm big a texture person too. There's my wife even knows there's some things, cream sauces, certain things don't even serve. Actually, when we were out of town with the family a while back, she's like, "Go eat, go go get a hamburger somewhere." She's like, "You're not going to like this." So, but yeah, it's a big thing. I understand that. Well, that's interesting though.
Mushrooms.
So you like everything? Oh God, I hate mushrooms for the most part. She loves them, and it's just
I,
they're
I
like
like the
squishy.
I like the taste. I cannot stand the texture.
No, I got you. Sort of poop is still moving. All right. All right. Well, that's a good answer. I appreciate you filling in. That was one that needed. Okay. Favorite beverage.
Alcoholic or non?
I leave it open to you, but well, go ahead. What about your favorite? Well, your favorite alcoholic beverage is,
Whiskey.
and your favorite non-alcoholic
Whiskey.
beverage would be
Whiskey on the rocks.
okay. Which I do know is ice cubes, so that's very cool. Okay, non-alcoholic drink.
Um, I think this is also a time of day thing. Early in the day, coffee. Later in the day, milk.
Okay, that makes sense.
Except I only drink raw milk, so
So from the goats and from the farm, you don't drink the pasteurized stuff out of the store.
so the stuff in the store is no longer pasteurized. It is ultra pasteurized, and it makes me sicker than a dog.
Okay, so you do have to go through a pasteurization process of your own milk, right?
Yeah, I just drink it.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
As long as everything is sanitized ahead of time, and as long as you filter the heck out of it, it's fine.
Okay. Well, there you go. The more you know. Snort Poop is Irish whiskey straight RC Cola. Weird bet.
Actually, I started on Crown and Diet Pepsi. That was my first drink in college,
Well,
and then I graduated to other whiskeys and not no mixer.
all right. Well, that works. Straight whiskey. Uh, I saw that a whiskey flask with Godzilla recently had to tag you on. That was hilarious. Um,
Yeah, it's so my I don't know if anyone in the chat is going to know who Skip Workman is.
I'm not sure.
Skip Workman was the right-hand man of Sonny Burgess who started the Hells Angels.
Oh, okay.
His son was my best friend in college.
Oh, interesting.
Uh, yeah, didn't know that for quite some time, but very, very interesting. Um, the official, unofficial drink of the Hells Angels is Crown Royal and Diet Pepsi, or at least was at the time. Um,
Oh, interesting.
and I don't even think my friend knew that. I think he just knew that's what his dad drank all the time. And so that's just kind of what we drank.
Oh, that's too funny. That's hilarious. Small world, small world. Okay, here's a good one for you. Favorite hobby, non-gaming.
Favorite hobby, non gaming.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I mean, my animals, I guess, unless they count as a job, in which case I guess it would be reading,
Okay, that
writing.
works.
I don't know. Most of my jobs are, or most of my hobbies are also jobs. So I
Well,
love reading. I love reading. I love writing. I love my animals, but I also, do all of them for. For
Gotcha. Your favorite color?
again, I don't have one. I like any colors that are bright and brilliant. I do not like pastels.
Hmm.
Um, I don't like I don't like passive colors. I like the bolder the better.
All right.
I
Uh,
will
mhm.
say I don't think enough people wear yellow or orange. I think they're wonderful colors, and I think for some strange reason, especially that like kind of dark rust orange,
Hmm.
I love that color, and nobody ever wears it.
Oh, and that's I'm orange is a weird thing to me. I mean, I will some orange, but yeah, it's
I mean, like
it,
neon orange, I kind of get it,
yeah,
unless it makes it look like
mm,
you're going hunting or going to prison.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. No
but like that
jumpsuits.
that like dusky rust color, I think is a wonderful, wonderful color.
Yeah,
And it just doesn't seem to. I had a sweater that color once. It was my favorite sweater for till it totally fell apart.
no, no, I hate when that happens. Okay, favorite movie.
God, you're just getting me with all the topics that I don't really have answers to.
Oh, it's okay. Just
Um,
you can
I think
bullshit it. It's
that's kind of a genre thing.
mhm.
The Godfather is amazing. Dark City is amazing. Um, I don't tend to like a lot of American comedies.
How many have we
Um,
not stolen from the British? You know, or the Asian communities? It shows. It's like all of American television is rip off of other people.
uh, well, the good ones.
The good, exactly the
But
good ones.
there's a lot of really bad comedic television and bad comedic movies that are just so
Yeah,
American humor tends to be based on embarrassment or injury, and I have
right,
just never found those things funny.
right,
Um, Whereas British humor tends to be based more on insults and wordplay.
right. More
Um,
intellectual. Yeah,
um, but I do like the Blues Brothers, the
I love
original
the
one,
blues. Yep. Oh yeah, 2000. Why do they even bother with that anyway? Yeah. Back
because
to yellows.
for the same reason they're remaking everything now.
Yellow doesn't suit most people. Mrs. likes yellow. Oh, yellow makes her look sick, but she can wear oranges. Yeah, don't worry. The oranges get sticky, but yellow and orange are not masculine colors. So unless it's part of a uniform jersey, that's something I don't see most men wearing. Oh, CJ
So
talked about. Go ahead.
yellow suits dark complected people. Like during the summertime, like if you get a tan and dark hair, it looks great. But people are so used to the idea that it's not that they just don't wear it. Uh, I would bet that there are shades of yellow that would be great for Mrs. Stedman.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't know, like I get where pastel yellows are, would not be seen as masculine. Um, though I had a great teacher in high school who used to wear he had an entire suit that was pastel yellow, and he used to wear it simply for the point that he said, the fact that I am willing to wear this tells you exactly how comfortable I am with my masculinity.
There you go. It's like me wearing a
Um,
pink shirt. Mrs. loves the pink shirt, but I don't care. I'll wear it.
but like dark oranges, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
why is dark orange not masculine, but bright red is? I mean, like the
Uh,
crossover difference color wise
they're
is
very
almost non
close.
existent.
Exactly. CJ said 13-4 wasn't bad if you like Dark City, came out the same year. Snort Poopa said movie depends on movement at the time. Eraserhead said wear black, all black. It's easier. Yeah. Unless you're in Florida in the summer, you
Yeah,
know.
and it gets so humid here that black can be problematic too.
Exactly. Yeah, red is color blood. Men are okay with that. And yeah, like Snort Poop is always warning us about the yellow snow out there. All right, we got a few more questions. What is your favorite sport if you have one?
I'm not really crazy about sports.
Okay.
I mean, I like poker a lot.
All right. That's fine. That's
I
cool.
think that counts as a sport these days
Well,
for
it
some
can be
reason.
these days. Gaming can be a sport. You know, they got video game contests on it's team sports. It's crazy. Watch
Well,
ESPN, you get the World Series of Poker and stuff like that. So,
yeah, I mean, my my outlook is I don't really like watching things. I like doing things.
I agree.
Um,
Yes,
and
napping
so,
counts as a sport. Yes.
um, so I mean, most people that are fans of various sports is because they like to watch a specific sport, and
Mhm.
I don't really get. I mean, I really struggle watching people play video games. It's like there are a lot of channels I would like to be more supportive of, but the idea of sitting there and watching someone else play a video game is just so weird to me. Plus, I eventually get motion sick. So,
See, I'm like one. If I do it, whether it's playing a certain, I get tired of. I don't want to sit on the sideline. I want to be in. It's like even Fortnite. It's like sometimes I want to get in action. I don't want to sit here and wait. I mean, if I got some things to do in the meantime, I don't mind. But just sitting there watching gets hard. I mean, watching some of these sporting events, it's hard just sitting there watching after so long. But I mean, it's about being a doer sometimes, I believe. Keep moving along. Favorite dessert, candy or sweet?
I'm not crazy about sweets. So,
Okay. Uh,
I am definitely. So the question I was kind of expecting was cake or pie, and the answer will always be pie.
why
Um,
why pie over cake?
I hate cake.
The texture or just
Uh, it, Cakes are just sugar. I mean,
okay?
especially if they've got frosting on them.
Mhm.
There's nothing I like about them.
Okay, what
On
favorite
the
pie do you have then?
Favorite pies are seasonal. So
Okay.
spring is strawberry rhubarb. Um, Summer is fresh strawberry. Fall is key lime pie.
Wow.
And winter used to be chocolate cream pie until I couldn't have it anymore.
Oh, chocolate cream pie. Yep, I know. It's oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. So, all right. Favorite video game, if you have one.
That's a little bit of a mood thing too. If
Hmm.
I just want to kill stuff, I'm a big fan of the Diablo games.
Hmm.
Um, Most of my games tend to be older games because I'm a cheapskate and I don't see paying $80 for a game.
Oh, that's fair.
Um, if I'm feeling more, I don't know, thoughtful, I guess.
Okay.
Um, I'm going to take some flack for this one, but I thought Zero Dawn was great. It is, I think, the first game I have ever actually cared about the storyline.
Hmm.
Um, the main adventure is not wildly interesting to me in a lot of ways, but all the little side stuff that like tells you about the history of the world was I thought was very well done.
Gotcha.
Um,
Yeah, that's a game I'm not familiar with, but hey, that's awesome. Oh, what do we got here?
Cheese.
Cheese, goat cheese, right?
That was actually cow cheese.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay.
Um, and this actually is a picture on what goes wrong because where the wax has cracked here, it's allowed bacteria in.
Mm, okay.
Um, this was an improperly waxed cheese, which is for some reason very easy to do with yellow wax. I prefer yellow wax, but red for some reason does. I think it's because it's more obvious to see where there are errors in the red because the white shows through more.
Hmm.
Um, though I do think red cracks more. But yeah, this one was an
Gotcha.
improperly waxed cheese, so the
Well,
chickens
you
ate
got
it.
a lot of great reactions. Everybody loves the cheese, the chat. So, and Rachel will love that game you mentioned. So that's okay.
Zero Dawn, yeah.
Yeah. So it's okay. So to follow up on that, do you play on PC or console?
Some of both. I
Mm-hmm.
do more console these days because when companies started saying, you don't really own your games,
Mm-hmm.
I got a lot more determined to own my games. And so I went to
Mm-hmm.
pretty much all the games I buy now are physical media.
Gotcha.
But
I don't blame you.
I still have a bunch, that were left on Steam. If
Well.
anybody happens to be a history buff,
Mm-hmm.
there is a game that I really enjoy called Help Will Come Tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a story that takes place in Russia right after the fall of the Tsar. Um, and you have a bunch of rebels that bomb a train, and you play 4 survivors who are on the train, all of whom are from different social classes. And so it's a resource allotment game, but you also have to allot them getting along, because if they don't get along, they will just stop working together and then they die.
And what's that game called again?
It's called Help Will Come Tomorrow. And you have
Okay.
to survive 28 days in the Siberian winter. And I have won the game out of the dozens of times I have played. I have won twice on the easiest setting.
There you go. Hey,
That is how difficult it is.
well, so
Um,
that's cool because I like the concept set after the Russian Revolution and surviving Siberia. That would be kind of cool.
so I
Uh,
like it because it's very simple graphics. Um, and you can literally take as long as you want to like do things.
hmm
And it has wonderful, relaxing music. So what I do is I bring it up and I leave it in the background while I'm working on a project. And
Right.
then when I need a break for the project, I like do 2 days on the game,
Ah,
and
there
then
you
I
go.
just go back to listening to the music while I work on my
Oh, that's
project.
cool. That's cool. The way to multitask, do both stress relief and do what you have to. And yes, Legatus, physical media. My wife has almost 5,000 DVDs. She's collected so much physical media from retail, from just discount stores, thrift
Yeah,
shops and stuff like that.
don't let my husband hear that because I have worked so hard to get him to clean some of his out.
Oh, well, my wife loves it. She's always moving stuff around the house and stuff. And it's like, when she finally gets organized, then it's not long after. Then it's time to resort and everything else. So, which console, by the way, do you play? PlayStation, Twitch, or
So we have a PS4 and we have an Xbox 360.
okay? Well, we can still get you on to Fortnite one day. Maybe we can check you into that one day.
I told you I have like really old systems because I
I
don't
know.
see the need to pay three thousand
No, I don't
dollars for a
blame you.
for a scalped PS5.
I don't blame you. I was like, we happened to got ours on a deal, but we kind of had to. If I was going to do gaming streaming, had to make a decision. But we actually got a good deal on it, and I got some gift money, and it was like really really cool. But yeah, because I wasn't sure the PS4 was dying, and it was like,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, if
I
I
had to
if
back
I were
her
to
up.
ever if I were to ever stream a game, it would be Diablo 3, and that's on the Xbox 360, and I don't think it would take it.
Yeah. All right, a couple other questions here because I know we're running out of time. Coming up on the 2 hour mark, we're trying to stick with it too. I'm going to go back to Legatus. There's a question Legatus had earlier, but to finish up my questions, um, and I hope maybe you didn't cover this earlier. What inspired you to start streaming?
Um, I don't know. I got bullied into it.
That happens. That happens.
Um, no, I'm being kind of facetious. So let's see. I was watching a lot of videos. I was doing a lot of commenting. I kind of got to start knowing people. I got a lot of how come you never make videos? I was like, because I don't think I'd
hmm
be very good at it, and because I don't like outrage stuff enough.
Right.
So I started doing some pre-recorded videos, which you can still find somewhere in the back catalog um, of my channel. And honestly, I really enjoyed those. It kind of played into the fact that I'm good at research and I like doing deep dives and analyzing things. But the fact is, it was really niche, and so I wasn't getting a lot of watch hours.
hmm
Um, and I really love, I don't know, I guess sticking up for the little guy. I like the television shows nobody else watched. I like the movies everybody missed. I like the books nobody read. I like uh I like the games nobody plays. Um and I kind of, I work was really slow and I really wanted to do more, but I'm a really slow editor, so I couldn't take on more pre-record video editing. I'm very slow.
hmm
Um I couldn't take on any more pre-recorded stuff, and so I kept getting like, you should take up live streaming. And so I was like, all right. So I decided I was going to do Slice and Dice, which originally was going to be just people talking about the games they liked.
hmm
And of course, has since morphed into people talking about games they're making, which is
Oh,
very cool.
Yeah, that's
Um,
interesting how that show transformed.
well, I just, people kept saying, "Hey, I've got this game. Do you mind if I come on your show?" And I was like, "Sure."
Hmm.
And then there just kind of got to be more and more and more of them. Um, and I'm getting to the point where I'm getting like bigger names that do bigger games, which is really
Oh
cool.
wow, yeah.
And unfortunately, it's happening at the same time everybody's apparently getting sick of it and isn't watching anymore.
Ugh, I know it's horrible.
Um,
Speaking of sick of things, Yemi here. Yemi is sick of here. He's here to rant because he and I debate that single space and double space. And he would probably was not here earlier. See, I fight for the double space. And what do you say again, Goat?
uh, it may be different for programming or certain organizations, but just in straight writing, the single space is correct.
There you go, Yemi. You
Today,
win. You win, Yemi. There you go.
six
But we
six
can't fight.
months 6 months from now, that may be different, but today it's the single space.
Well, we can't fight it, but yes, exactly. So he, I know, is going to rub my face in that forever, but that's okay. That works. So, and yes, just a warning: many PS4, Xbox Generation 4 games have where they are only partially on disc or disc is the key to a download file. Yeah, you got to be careful just because it's make sure it's you really have the physical game. Yep, single, and I win. Thank you. There, I told you. I told you. This guy came in just for that. Goat. All right, one more
Well,
thing.
now he doesn't have to rant.
No, he doesn't. No, he was going to come after me with that. So yeah, CJ, I'm not going to rewrite 50 years of program. Yeah, we're not reissuing our reports either. So your streaming avatar, you touched on that very briefly earlier. How did you get this particular avatar that you use?
Um, so I used to have a YouTube channel for my homestead.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had a bunch of goat avatars made up for that. I had to shut it down because people were tracking it back to my actual homestead and harassing me.
Mm,
Um, but I had all these goat avatars, and
right.
I really liked them. Um, and I didn't really have anything else when I started doing videos, so I just kind of started using them on that.
Mm,
And then when I decided I was going to change the name to the Eclectic Goat, I decided I wanted something a little bit spicier than just a goat hanging out.
yeah. I
um,
mean, it's really classy. I mean, I will say the glasses, the tie, the suit, the glass. I mean, it really does look very cerebral, very classy. A bit of elegance, to it, not just a goat there.
yeah, like my intro says, snappily dressed and only slightly deranged.
I love the deranged comment. That's awesome. So, all right, one last question here. Uh, what is the craziest or funniest memory you've had from a stream that you were on or you hosted?
Uh, oh, Eraserhead knows the answer to this one.
Uh-oh.
So I decided I was going to add in a show called Shows You've Never Seen.
Right.
And I was going to take younger people who had not watched, 90s or early 2000s television and watch a show with them that I really enjoyed that was not commonly watched. And the point was that, we talk a lot about, oh, media was better. And we always list off like the same 5 or 6 things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my point was, here are the shows no one watched. Here are the shows that were canceled in 1 or 2 seasons. Um, and they're still so much better than what's on today. And these were the bad shows.
Yep.
So we watched the first season of Carnival.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then that didn't get a whole lot of attention either, and I was getting busy, so I decided we weren't going to do season 2. Um, so the
Now we have
first
pies, CJ. Uh, so
so the first show, yeah, did you finish it yet, Eraserhead? He said he was going to watch the second season anyway.
uh,
Um, so the first show we did, Eraserhead was going to do his debut.
Mm-hmm.
He's been a mod everywhere. He'd never been streaming. I had people in my chat that have never even looked at my channel because like everyone was excited to like see Eraserhead on.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this was terrible at the time, but I laugh about it now. So apparently, Eraserhead was backstage waiting for us to start, and he could hear us and he could see us, but we had no idea he was there because Evie Mux had like goofed somehow, and it just did not acknowledge him at all.
Huh. Yeah.
Um, and I'm not sure we ever did figure out it. We found out what the sound issue was. I'm not sure we ever figured out what the visual issue was. Um, and so we struggled and struggled and struggled, and then we finally had to go live, and we kept trying to do it behind the scenes anyway, and we finally just gave up. Um, but so everybody turned out for this debut, and then he couldn't get in. So,
Gosh, that's hilarious.
and the funny thing is
Yeah.
that like he didn't know we couldn't see him, so he couldn't figure out why we kept talking about him like he wasn't there.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
gosh. Oh man. That.
but yes, he's also correct that there was also an episode where Sammy Threepeat was on, and we refer to that as the dumpster fire episode because it ended up going like the show was supposed to go 3 hours max.
Right.
This one went for 4
Yes. All
um,
right. Yeah.
because Sammy kept going on about how unhappy he was with the show because nothing made any sense and there were all these mystery boxes and he wasn't going to know what was going on by the time we got done, and we get to like the last 10 minutes of the show and he makes a comment about the main character being a World War I veteran. And we all
Mm-hmm.
went, "What are you talking about? He's like 19, and this takes place in 1932. He's not a World War I veteran." And he's like, "There are all these scenes of him in World War I." I was like, "Those are his visions. Like the
Oh.
whole point of this is that he has visions." And
Okay.
the and and there's just dead silence for a second, and then Sammy goes, "Oh my god, I have totally misunderstood this entire show since day one." And
Oh
the
my.
last 20 minutes of the show is literally just him screaming.
Oh God. Yeah. No wonder Rachel remembered it. World War One confusion. I'm sitting here like, what does this mean? Well, we just.
Yeah, there will be World War I jokes forever.
Well, that's a topic we don't hear much more of about these days. Is World War One? Yeah. Oh gosh,
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
Eraserhead and I will have this as an inside joke forever, and no one's ever going to know what we're talking about, except
That
Sammy,
that yeah.
who will just jump in every so often and go,
Well,
"Fuck you."
there you go. That's a spirit, and just like everything else, it's like, oh God, gotta love it, gotta love it. Oh, that's too funny. Of course, a 4 hour stream. Hey, we love those long streams there. So, oh, the bird is a huge World War One buff, absolutely. But Rachel says she doesn't think his brain will ever recover, and I don't think we will either. That had to
Yeah,
be a heck of an
4 hour stream
episode.
is one thing, but it was a very awkward 4 hour stream because he'd make jokes that no one understood, and he didn't
Uh,
understand why we didn't understand them, and it's because he didn't understand the show.
yeah, that
Yeah,
that would do it.
Razorhead's like, "Me the entire stream. What is Sammy talking about?"
Yes. Go ahead, Legatus. Go ahead and get the question in. I'm going to come back to that real quick. I just wanted to finish up with my because we got to the end of it this time, but I didn't even get those questions out last time. So now Legatus actually had to ask earlier when it comes to doing work on an international level, do you have to worry about U.S. standard versus U.K. standard or color versus color, a lot versus a lot?
So I think we covered the things like the spelling and the punctuation. Um, yes, I do have to worry about them. Um, Part of it is I can partially set um, my programs to kind of try and pick up. Actually, the hardest part for me is because I did used to read a lot of English. Um, it's sometimes hard for me to pick up, like if I'm editing for an American audience, but it's a UK author or vice versa. Um, to me, either form is so natural that sometimes I forget to pick it up because it's not technically grammatically incorrect either way, so it doesn't fire off the little red flags in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have a thing on my computer that I can set it to like spelling checks to UK or USA, so that helps some. Um, though there isn't a Grammarly checker program anyway that isn't going to throw a hissy fit about. Well, I mean, probably in the UK, Grammarly likes certain spellings just fine, but they don't here.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way to reset those. So it's really just a matter of reading stuff over and over and over again just to make sure I got everything. I also read stuff out loud a lot because you pick up a lot more in phrasing
Uh,
and spelling when you read it out loud.
yes. Again, I
Um,
agree. I've done that at work, talking it out loud. Or if somebody asks me a question of something, just sometimes hearing it gets it off the paper, and just there's something about that audio clue that you can look by past. So sometimes if you're reading, especially if you're speed reading, you just fly right past it. But yet, if you hear it, you might pick up on that clue, or it might hit you, and you understand. Hey, that doesn't sound right. That's not what I intended to say.
hmm Yep.
So, yep.
Um, the other thing that you'll figure out too is that I always joke that your brain needs a breath once in a while. So if you read a sentence out loud and you can't get through the whole sentence without gasping for air, you need to
Hmm.
break the sentence up.
Yeah, I'm good for big long run on sentences. Unfortunately, Sashi's over in Malaysia. He said most of us accept that you guys spell and pronounce things differently. We just think of you as one of our quirky acquaintances and move on.
Yeah, it's like the earlier conversation though. Like there's a difference
Yeah.
between when you're talking and when you're writing. I mean,
Hmm.
you can write. Sorry, my dog is going nuts for some reason. You can say things and use slang and nobody's going to blink, but when you're reading, it's different. Um, there's
Hmm.
some cases where I don't know, and this is a topic of debate too amongst a lot of writers. Publishers do not want to publish anything these days that is written for anything above a seventh grade reading level.
That's a shame.
They are
Yeah.
convinced that readers do not have the attention span, um, that they don't have the grasp of words, that they're going to need to look things up, and they want, especially for mostly for fiction, they want quick, light, fast reads that people are just going to absorb and move on. They
Hmm.
it's a content thing. It's like the whole people aren't making movies anymore; they're making content. And the same is really true of a lot of publishers, which is one of the reasons that I tried really hard to push indie authors for a while, and still am to a certain extent.
Hmm.
But like, I walked into the bookstore 2 weeks ago, I think it was, and I was desperately trying to find something different to read. And I picked up maybe a dozen books.
Hmm.
All the new books were by female authors, which is not automatically a bad thing because I've read some very good female authors.
Hmm.
What was a problem was that they had almost identical blurbs on the back.
Hmm.
Um, like I read the blurb and I was like, I can tell you right now how the story ends. And I could flip to the back page and read it, and I was right.
Hmm. Hmm. And I agree with CJ here. You got to expand
Yeah,
their
I was.
minds and vocabulary
Yeah,
because
it's a
yeah.
chicken and the egg thing. Like they want people to read, so they dumb it down, but that makes people dumber, so you have to dumb it down more. There's a whole thing about the fact that Shakespeare had a regular daily vocabulary of 30,000 words. And at the
Wow,
time I got
that's
these
impressive.
at the time I got these statistics, and it's not like he was, I mean, yes, he was a writer, but he wasn't that special in his time, not like he is now. Um, we have an average working vocabulary of 3,000 words. Um, and we seem perfectly fine with that.
Well,
Um,
3,000,
I
it seems like a lot of words, though. But
it's really not though. Um, I mean, you think
mhm.
about it, like it's a fraction of the dictionary. And I'm
Yeah,
not
that's
talking I'm just talking like I mean that counts things like of and the and
right.
um the English language has one word for love where Greek has six.
Right, exactly. And it depends on what word agape or eros and all in the context and what they mean. Yeah, exactly. So,
So part of that is the English language, but Shakespeare spoke English. He just spoke a very different form of English than we do.
right,
And that deterioration will continue as long as, they say, well, we don't write books for boys anymore because boys don't read. Well, boys don't read because nobody's writing books they want to read,
right. Yeah, and that's true.
which
Uh,
results in men that don't read.
hmm I'll be honest. I was just a lazy reader growing up, but I will say I learned to enjoy reading at times. Um, Either some of the history stuff or but like the Lord of the Rings trilogy. That was just I could not put that down. I mean, The Hobbit I actually could read very well. A number of the Star Wars expanded universe. Just when I found the right thing as I got to be an adult, I could read it. I could binge read it. I'd stay at the 4 o'clock in the morning just enjoying the book. But one of the pressures too nowadays is we spend all this time on our computer screens. We have to read like at work, depending on what you do. And I'll be honest, a lot of times the last thing I want to do is come home and read more because I've spent all day reading and writing and
There is
typing and
Yeah,
Mhm.
the problem is though they're very different ways that your brain works between reading. So, for instance, I can tell you the plot of every book I have ever read in paper.
Wow.
Um, but if you ask me about a book I read yesterday electronically, I don't know that I could tell you.
Hmm.
I just can't seem to retain in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and give me a second. I'm looking up his name. There is a channel that I strongly suggest that anyone interested in the topic look up. His name is Jared something or other. And he writes a lot about how your brain works between using technology versus reading. Jared Henderson.
Okay.
Um, his his thingy is at underscore Jared.
Okay.
Um, and I found his channel because he put out a video called Elite College Students Who Can't Read Books.
Hmm.
And it's all about how our brains have been trained for these short bursts of attention. Um, quick dopamine hits on our phone, quick dopamine hits. Elmo is actually theorized to have been part of the reason for the increase in ADHD cases.
Interesting.
Um, because before Elmo, if you go back and you look at like early children's shows, they were kind of slow and thoughtful. There was some yelling, but it was all, quick. The
Mm-hmm.
main character was a dull green frog and a bright yellow bird.
Mm-hmm.
And then along came Elmo, who is bright red, who is constantly screaming, who waves his arm around. And the idea was to keep kids' attention. But what it actually did was make it so that they have a harder time focusing on the dull green frog.
I've never heard that. That's a very interesting
I
thought.
mean, it's
Yeah.
it's not provable. It's a
No.
theory, but there is
Well,
definitely
everybody does
the
likes.
fact there's definitely a noticeable uptick in.
Well, yeah. Well, everybody does like to hate on Elmo a little bit these days. So it's
No, that
sorry.
that theory that
Yeah.
theory came out
Yeah.
long before hating on Elmo became fashionable.
Okay,
Um,
well, I'm usually late to the party, but that's interesting.
um, Cell phones are another thing. I mean, the fact that we give kids phones earlier and earlier, the fact that
Hmm.
we give kids electronics earlier and earlier.
Yep.
Um, have you ever heard the song "Welcome to the Internet" by Bo Burnham?
No, I've not heard that.
Yeah, when we're done, you should go listen to it.
Okay, I have to do that. I
Um,
like.
it is creepy and a great truism at the same time. Um,
Hmm.
and it's all about how we don't learn anything deeply anymore. We learn little shallow facts on many topics.
Hmm.
But there are very few people, lots of people like want to know the same 6 questions about goats all the time.
Right.
Very few people want to sit down and read the 20 books I have on my bookshelf that are just about goats.
Right. Yeah, we want the Cliff's Notes version or a video or YouTube lookup.
Yeah,
Some
we
three
wanted
minutes in and out. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and it needs to be a really short YouTube video because nobody
Hmm.
can watch a 20-minute video.
Right. See, this is what I was coming back to what Mrs. said here early. If you try to read older novels like 1800s, very difficult to read. You have to retrain your brain for the more complex vocabulary and sentence structures. And that's like just not that you have to do it in modern communication, but I, still, I mean, how much we struggle with the casualness of language and things like yeah that we struggle with today. That's taking the standards down. But I look at the Victor Hugo, What Led Ms. Rob is such a huge book, the epic, the Odyssey, those classics that are just like so many pages.
How many people could read Lord of the Rings anymore?
Yeah.
It's and I remember the turning point too. I mean, I remember when I was in school, like busting your butt in school, and it was better to get a B in an honors class than it was to get an A in a, phase 2 class.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because you wanted to be working, you wanted to be challenging yourself. And then 4 years later, my brother got to high school and went to sign up for classes. Now, understand, I am the very stupid member of my family.
No, I
Um,
can't believe that.
oh,
No.
no. I'm not saying I'm stupid.
No, right.
I'm saying that when it comes to my family, I am the very stupid member. Um,
Okay.
my brother is ridiculously smart.
Mm-hmm.
My mother is pretty much on the same plane. Um, my dad was very smart in very specific kinds of ways. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so my brother signed up for all these honor courses, and yes, exactly. The Elmo and
Yeah.
Sesame Street. Cookie Monster wasn't great either. Um, for the the
Yeah.
waving things around. Um, but he got to school and he started signing up for all these honor courses, and my mom got a call because they informed her he should not sign up for so many honor courses because that might be hard. And she said, "So, like he's been taking advanced math classes since he was in 6th grade."
Mm-hmm.
And they said, "Well, yeah, but we don't want to hurt his self-esteem if he doesn't get an A."
Mm. Well.
And that same year, they forced 2 teachers into retirement because they didn't give enough A's. Understand, both of those teachers had never like I should not have graduated high school
Mm-hmm.
because I couldn't pass a language to save my life.
Wow.
That teacher passed me despite the fact that I was absolutely terrible. But he didn't give enough A's. He didn't fail anyone, but he didn't give enough A's.
Wow. That
Um,
is
and
interesting.
I really remember that as being the turning point
Mm-hmm.
where things, publishers started wanting dumber books. Um, everything from that point just went into that was also the beginning of the whole No Child Left Behind thing.
Right.
Um,
That's
you
what
know,
early 2000s.
uh, yeah, it might have been. I graduated late 90s, so yeah, that sounds about right. Um, but it's one of the reasons I will not write fiction because I won't I forget I won't. I don't know that I can. Um, I use too many big words.
It's okay.
and publishers don't like them.
No.
Um, and
Yeah.
and words that I consider to be just kind of general usage. They're
Hmm.
like, this is not a seventh grade reading level. Like, you need to bring this down. And I'm like, I can't. Like, that's
No.
just how I write. Um,
Yeah.
I write things in a very Lovecraftian, thoughtful, internal thinking kind of way.
Hmm.
And it's not action oriented enough.
No. No. It's
Um, and so
that.
I gave up writing fiction because it just wasn't worth it.
No. I know. That's the sad with it. Like we talk television, all of that. That's the same thing that we see. Yes, Legatus told me earlier, 2 hours minimum. I told you we'd make it at least 2 hours. So we're at 2 hours
Plus,
15. I,
here's
I,
here here's
yeah.
the
Go ahead.
secret for anyone in the audience who wants to be a writer. Um, Fiction pays better for the 0.00001% who become Stephen King famous.
Mm,
Um, Nonfiction pays better for almost everyone else.
gotcha.
Fiction pays a penny or less a word quite frequently.
Wow, that's.
Um, Nonfiction pays, unless you're talking like, um, oh, what's the name of that? Like Screen Rant or one of
Mm,
those things.
yeah.
Um, Nonfiction pays 25 to 30 cents a word. That's
That.
the difference between fiction and nonfiction. Again,
Wow.
unless you want to write for so everybody talks about how terrible
Hmm.
entertainment journalists are. I have been
Right.
offered multiple jobs by entertainment companies,
Hmm.
and I turn them down because I don't need them,
Right.
and because they force entertainment journalists to write the slop they write. They require a fully researched, written, edited, and illustrated article, at least one a day, 28 out of every 30 days.
Wow. How the. Wow.
And you're
That's just.
freelance, and you're
Yeah.
freelance.
Yeah.
So no sick time, no vacation time, no nothing.
28 out of 30 days. Jeez.
You're working 7 days a week for 28, for most of the month. Um, and they pay $20 or less an article.
Wow, I was floored when Rachel said 3,000 words isn't even a typical chapter. But geez, I mean, that talk about why would anybody? I mean, except for future growth or if you want to make a name for yourself. But it's like it's like sports athletes. They
Well,
the.
it's because people don't know any better. I mean, one of the things I really wanted to discuss for anyone who wanted to get into writing is that there is a new tendency on the part of businesses. They say, we're
Mhm,
interested in hiring you, but you have to do this project so we can see what your writing style is like. And this is especially big with companies that are doing marketing.
mhm.
And they'll say, here's a product or here's some information. Write me a 2,000 word social media marketing thing, and also make it so that it works on Instagram. Prove to us
Right,
you can do that, and we'll consider you for this position. Except they tell 10 other people the same thing,
right.
and then they don't hire any of you because now they have 20,000 words worth of social media information
Yeah,
that they can
just
just use.
right. Mrs.
And
said, yeah,
that will
go ahead.
continue happening until everyone realizes it's a scam and says, no, I'm not going to do that.
Well, like in education, I think Mrs. hits the thing with this is once you figure out what the recipient's expecting, you can come up with great stuff. Like she said, she figured out what the teacher wanted, then wrote to that. I would even ask them. Sometimes they'd answer, "What do you want?" And so you're not really, you know, venturing out there. You're just watching what they do. And of course, Sesame Street with that trend.
Well,
Uh,
I've always thought it funny that you have to go to college to learn to do creative writing. Somebody has to
mhm.
teach you the proper way to be creative. Same thing with
Yeah.
art schools, you know.
Oh yeah, that's a.
Why is somebody teaching you the proper way to be creative? Um, when I had to take a creative writing class in college,
Hmm.
And the college I went to happened to have one of the most sought after creative writing programs in New England.
Hmm.
Um, and I thought the idea of going to college for creative writing was really silly. But I had to take this course.
Well, some people do with the art. I've heard some of the big streamers talking about that with specifically with the art schools. I mean, they're not worth the degree's not worth the
And
paper they're printed on.
how many people will ever be able to make a living doing art?
Yeah.
It's just it's not terribly realistic. And this is one of the reasons that people panic over AI art, because we've now flooded the market with wannabe artists who are now
Hmm.
competing not only with each other, but with computers. And the fact
Absolutely.
is that those that are really good would have been really good anyway, and they will rise to the top
Hmm.
whether there is AI art or not. But all of the mediocre people who plugged tens of thousands of dollars into these educations probably won't,
Right.
unless again they learn to adapt and overcome. So the fella that I dated before my husband and I got back together. That sounded weird, didn't it?
A little bit, but it's okay.
Well, we dated many years ago. It didn't work. We both went our separate ways. We came back. We got married. Um,
Hey, there you go.
so
All in due time.
the guy that I dated for like 10 years in between there had a daughter.
Hmm.
And she was an incredibly talented artist from a very young age. Um, she was also very good at math. There's a very strange thing that a lot of mathematicians tend to be good artists and vice versa. Um, and she in middle school said, I want to be an artist. And we sat down and we said, that's great. Like, you're really talented, but, we don't want to discourage you. Here are the statistics.
Hmm.
Is there something else you would enjoy where you can use your art that, you have a better chance of like not starving to death in New York?
Yeah.
And she went away for a week and she came back and she said, I'm going to be an architect. And she was in
Right.
middle school. She was in middle school. And she graduated from high school. She never changed her mind. She got her undergrad degree, she got her grad degree. She's been working for the same architect company ever since.
Wow. Yep. Finding something practical. Yeah. Um, I don't know if you want to hit this issue. We kind of touched on a little bit about children's entertainment. Uh, I'm looking at time. I mean, I got as much. I mean, we might need to find a time to wrap up. Just depending
Yeah,
on how long you want to go.
we
But
probably need to
yeah,
be winding down, but I'm happy to answer any other questions that.
yeah. I mean, do you want to hit this one for a minute about how children's entertainment, or we don't have to? We can just didn't
Um,
know if you had any thoughts about that.
I
This.
think it's hard to say what actually leads to the ADHD. It's also hard to say how much of it is really ADHD and how much of it is just overly permissive parenting.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I didn't work a lot with kids when I was doing mental health, so I don't know a ton about that. I do know that there are a ton of studies on the fact that the more electronics time you give kids over an hour, the dumber they get. There are studies about the fact that they're tentative studies, but there are tentative studies about a connection between early use of electronics and later in life drug use,
Hmm.
um, including really severe drug use. There are connections between the overuse of electronics and behavioral issues. And while there are not connections between video games and violence, there are connections between certain at-risk individuals and certain types of video games that are very definitive.
Interesting.
Um, if you have teenagers that are troubled, come from problematic homes, um, kind of already have all of the red flags, then there are certain video games, and I mean very specific ones. I'm trying to think what they are. Basically, video games that involve a lot of violence and no teamwork.
Right.
So, video games that do require teamwork actually can be helpful, but solo violent games not so much.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um, so I mean, I don't think I don't think there's any one thing, but again, that's an opinion.
I
I have
gotcha.
some studies, but there just aren't enough
Mm-hmm.
good Fallout. I gotta say, I am not totally certain that I could read. I have read the Silmarillion twice. I don't know that I could read it now.
I took a look at it once and gave up. I'm like, where the hell do I start with this thing? I'm in the back of the. I mean, it's just like I like Lord of the. See, like Buddy said, Lord of the Rings was challenging enough to enjoy the Silmarillion. I just
Silmarillion.
looked Silmarillion. I just looked at it like, where do I start? And like was like,
So let me tell you, I have read the Bible cover to cover. I have read the Popol Vuh cover to cover, which is kind of the Mayan Bible. I have
mm-hmm.
read the Silmarillion. The Silmarillion is the hardest.
Yeah, I bet. I just took a look at it. And hey, again, JT Kirk, good to see you tonight. Legatus talks about the old English usage, did enjoy several of Shakespeare's works. Buddy was homeschooled up to high school, was the only person in high school classes who knew how to write in cursive. Yes, Mrs. and I, we homeschooled both of our kids and they learned how to do cursive. Uh,
Homeschooling can either be very good or very bad for kids. I have uh,
mm-hmm,
so Tom Kane, who has been on my show a couple times, was homeschooled. He has talked about that on the show. And it really allowed him, he would have been bored stiff in a public school.
mm-hmm,
He's also incredibly bright. He came from an incredibly bright family.
mm-hmm,
Um, on the other hand, let's see, how do I put this tactfully? I know people who have homeschooled their daughter because she had a learning disability, but they were so permissive about her learning disability that they never challenged her.
mm-hmm,
And I don't know how she's ever going to get a job now.
right.
Like she can't do basic things. They would go to the beach and call it a science class
Mm-hmm,
because they looked at muscles.
right. Yeah. Well, yeah,
So
it depends on the kid, the parents, and how it goes. See, you know,
absolutely,
it depends, and it depends on the child. One child may do something else, and well, it's like we've got one has their strengths, others, and the other is in a doctoral program at at university. It just depends, and um, yeah, most degrees are worthless, and a lot of that. Okay, Kate, take care, Sashi. Good to see you tonight. So, look at us. Liberal arts exam degrees are scams too. Yeah, you pay an art school to make connections and stuff. And the miss said the artists are the ones that make their own niche. So it's yeah, and then of
I
course
love
Mrs.
I love the fact that we went from like writing about homesteading to art schools are a scam.
Yeah, it's fine. And then we threw ADHD in it too. So, but that's what you get around on this channel. We'll take the topics. I think we hit the writing and editing pretty good. Unless there's something else you want to say, but like she said here, funding is a lot of the drive of a lot of stuff these days. Don't underestimate that for sure.
Uh,
But let me ask you
I
though:
do.
is go ahead.
Oh, well, I do want to make sure to touch on that. So I started this earlier about the fact that there are people that are afraid to use an editor because they're worried about their
Right.
story being changed.
Mm-hmm.
A good editor should never change your story. They should just make suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
Publishers, however, do get to make changes or tell you to make changes. That's the difference. That's why so many people are going to self-publishing. Um, there are a lot more ways to self-publish than through Amazon because Amazon also has some pretty strict requirements about certain things. Um, and even aside from the fact that I don't like Amazon, I also don't like some of the requirements they make. Um, there are some great small publishers in the United States who will publish semi-independently, so they'll allow you to keep control over your own work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they'll do kind of all of the legwork as far as getting published, but they don't do marketing, that kind of thing. There is a variety of types of editing, and this is one of the problems. People get scammed by editors,
Mm-hmm.
and it gives us all a really bad name. So there are proofreaders, grammar and spelling. There are line editors who will go through and look for things that don't make any sense, things that could be clearer, areas where You may have started off with one name and changed, facts that don't line up, things like that. There are certain editors that will do fact checking. I will do a limited amount of fact checking, but not on really technical stuff because I'm just not qualified.
Hmm.
So if you have a thing that needs to be fact checked, make sure you have an editor that's qualified to do your particular topic.
Hmm.
There are editors that will do rewrites. So they tell you this whole chapter doesn't make any sense, and you go, ugh, you know, screw it. I don't really want to do that. Can you just write it for me?
Right.
Um, some of them will do that, though again, make sure they do it the way you want it to be done, and make sure, uh, how do I say this? Make sure it doesn't come out worse than than when you wrote it.
Yes. Yes.
Because a lot of times it'll happen for things like memoirs, and they weren't there, they don't know.
No, exactly. Were you there? But well,
And
yeah.
sometimes what they'll do too is, if they're not honest,
Hmm.
is they'll say, "Oh, this section needs to be rewritten," in the hopes that you're going to ask them to rewrite it, so they can charge you extra. Um, there are occasionally editors that will help you with research, though that's getting more into like a co-writing thing. I usually only do that if I find the topic really interesting.
Hmm.
And I think maybe I've done it twice ever. Because it's your project. And
Right.
if they edit it, I mean, if they research, it's going to be their bias in the research. So,
Right. Absolutely. I have heard some cases on a podcast, a World War II podcast I had. They, the writer of the book actually had a co-writer, but they found a researcher who was not interested in writing a book, but was willing to let them have the research
yep.
or to utilize the research to, and it's a like a almost 1,000-page book. I read a couple years ago. It's like 800 pages. The reference section was like 500 pages. I'm like, holy crap,
Yep.
you know.
But the long and the short is that
Good
as
night,
much as I,
smart and high pop culture republics. Sorry, just get those in real quick. Yeah, go
that's all
ahead.
right. As much as I, would like to say not, there are scammers out there. Um, so, just it is not unreasonable to ask for references. It is not unreasonable um, to ask what their style is. But be
Hmm.
prepped. So, like and again, I don't know how other people do this, but when I give someone a quote, I ask for the first page of their document because that allows me to see how clean it is, how many typos they're likely to have, how much work I'm going to have to do. And then I assign a dollar amount based on that, and that dollar amount goes per page.
Mm.
Um, that also changes if they say, hey, here's 200 pages, I need it in a week.
Oh yeah.
Um, so, be prepared for time, be prepared for, but the number of people that I've had say, hey, can you take a look at this? My editor just up and quit on me. Um, so make sure
Yeah.
that and I didn't ask, but the impression I got was that they had up and quit after they had been paid. And I don't know why people pay ahead on things like that, but on the other hand, it's worrying for the editor too, because if they do 200 pages and then you don't pay them,
Yeah, it goes both ways. Yeah, and
yeah,
sometimes even the big companies seem to not pay either. Not just the small guys.
yeah. I have
Good luck
always
getting your
until
money after providing all that work and service, though. Yeah, that's gotta suck.
Yeah. Well, I mean, until recently, I did mostly writing. I did some editing, but I never advertised for it. It was kind of word of mouth. So it was always, someone who knew someone kind of thing. As I start doing more editing, I may have to change my here's your document, here's your invoice
Hmm.
policy. because I'm sure there's going to come a point where somebody's going to owe me $1,000 and just not pay it.
Yep.
I mean,
I.
even established companies. There is a
Mm-hmm.
fairly well-known magazine that shall remain nameless, that I did a ton of work for, and then I had to threaten to take them to court in order to get them to pay me. They owed me several $1,000s, and I had rewritten an entire section of their website. Um, and then they just kept saying, "Yeah, we'll get we'll get there, we'll get there, we'll get there, we'll get there." And month
Yeah.
after month after month went by. And I finally had to threaten to sue them. So, of course, I do not work for them anymore because they're never going to hire me again.
Right.
Um,
But then again, you may not want to work for them, considering how much they dragged
well,
you through.
the issue is that there were two departments to that company. One was
Mm-hmm.
the imprint department, and one was the online department. And then they had payroll. And I think the issue was through their payroll. Their payroll always seemed to be very disorganized. Like the imprint guy, the imprint editor once messaged me and said, "Hey, so they apparently forgot to like pay the last 20 people on the payroll that should have been paid, and you were on the list." So,
Mm-hmm.
and they refused to send out another check, so you have to wait until next month.
Ugh.
So I think their payroll department was mainly at fault. I think the online editor was new at her job and just trying to keep her head above water, and so didn't dare rock the boat.
Yep.
Um, and that part didn't pay great anyway. But the imprint section had fun topics. The editor was great to work for. It paid really well, and I was really disappointed to lose that.
Yeah.
But you can't let them walk on you, or like I said,
Mm-mm.
it's like the people that um it's like the companies that'll say, "Hey, I just want, free work so that I can see." Yeah, I agree with Mrs. Deadman. 50 before and
Yep.
50 after is
Yep.
probably appropriate.
Yep.
Um, unless the difference is that if it's a really established company. So the
Mm-hmm.
company in the UK has been around since like the 90s. They have a really good reputation. They've never ripped anybody off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm not something worried. I'm not worried about that. But
Yeah.
if somebody like came in off the street and said, "Here's a 350-page book, I'd like you to edit."
Yeah. You'd start to worry. Now,
Yeah, a little bit.
like I said, when editing, how often have you encountered when they change the writing style between first, second, third person?
Most people don't change their writing style in mid-book or in mid-story. Actually, the opposite problem tends to be true. So if you have multiple people in a book, they should all have a different voice. You should be able to get different personalities from them. And the bigger issue is when you've got three main characters and they all feel like exactly the same person.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
they all sound like the author.
Yeah. It's like that'd be a boring book. It's just the same.
Well,
Could,
it's also, we were talking about like dialogue and being
mm-hmm.
able to tell who's talking. If everybody sounds the same, that's definitely an issue.
Mm-hmm.
If they have very different, voices, then it becomes much easier to tell them apart without specifically saying who it is that's talking.
Mm-hmm.
I know there are books. So I mentioned earlier that there were some really good female authors, and I'm trying to remember her name. My favorite one wrote a book called The Fifth Season.
Mm-hmm.
She's also, which was part of a trilogy. She's also written the Dream Blood duology, which is like my favorite of her books. But in the fifth season, she writes from three different perspectives, three different people, and each person is writing in a different tense.
Mm-hmm.
One is writing in past tense, one is writing in present tense, and one is writing in present tense first person, I think it is. Or maybe it's even third person. It's been a while since I read it. So I mean, those things do exist, but it's quite difficult to get those types of things published because, again, they're not the nice, neat, dime store novel, chew them up and content
Oh
creator
yeah.
things.
Yeah, I talk about books. That's another topic we can go off in forever. But like how books are adapted to movies and entertainment. Maybe that's something we can talk about again another time, if it's something you would be interested in. But
I
for
mean,
me,
I do have an entire video series on hashtag the book is better.
well, maybe we can do something like that down the road, and we can hit it. I'll just real quickly because I know we've got another half an hour.
Yeah,
Uh,
I was going to say, I
yeah,
promised my husband I was going to be off at 9
I
tonight.
know,
So.
but we were just going. But so we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up. But one of the best examples I have is that I always heard about how great Grisham was,
Oh,
and I
John
went,
Grisham, the author?
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
You not a fan?
Um, I think my problem is the first book I read of his was The Runaway Jury,
Okay.
and I had seen the movie first.
Mm-hmm.
So I went in to read the book expecting something very different from what I got.
Right.
The book and the movie basically have the same name, and that's about it.
Right.
Um, yeah, and so I think that kind of shook me. It's sort of like
Yeah.
the first book I ever read for Dean Koontz was The Watchers.
Mm-hmm.
And The Watchers is so much better than anything else he wrote. I've never been able to get through another of his books.
Gotcha.
It's not that
Gotcha.
they're bad books. That one was just so much better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And hey, Jeff, by the way, hey, Jeff in Pop Culture Republic says book adaptations. That is a big subject there. Well, my experience goes back to Grisham's The Firm because
mhm.
I went to watch I heard about the book in high school, all that stuff, blew it off. Went to watch the Tom Cruise movie. Oh my God, I wanted to leave. I mean, it was so, yeah, hi, Mr. Mob Guy. I'm going to rat my bosses out, your attorneys, but I can't talk about you because of attorney-client privilege. Yeah, and you walk off still with your legs not floating under the river. And I hated the movie so much. I hated the movie so much that I went and bought a book so I could read the book. And I loved the book. Grisham's The Firm was an awesome book. And I'll talk more about that some other time.
Hashtag the book is better.
I loved it. But I will tell you, then the Pelican Brief came out. And you know what? Because I'd read the book before, the movie sucked because it was boring, because it was a case where the movie followed the plot of the book so to the letter. Had I not read the book, I would not have been able to fill in the gaps of the sequences. They left stuff. I mean, like I said, it's something we can talk about another time, but it's a case of where two different results. But yeah, I hated The Firm so much that I had to read the book, and that is big for
That's
me.
interesting because for so many people they say, well, if the movie is terrible, the book must be too.
No, I've learned a long time ago.
And so they only read the books on the movies they like.
Well, Michael Crichton, The Lost World, the book is a hell of a lot better than whatever thing they came up with.
I mean, almost everything that Michael Crichton wrote is better than the movies that came out of them.
Exactly. So
same with Stephen King. I mean, even the books he's written that have been terrible have been better than the movies that came from them.
I think Crichton was like Congo, and God, that was the most boring movie I've ever watched. I think I fell asleep on it.
Which is amazing because I suspect it's because the book is so grotesque that they probably couldn't put it in.
I don't know. But hey, we probably better stop there before we get going another hour on this topic. But we'll talk about that in the future. Maybe we can do something like that coming back in a future stream.
If you're up
to. All right. Well, listen, Eclectic Goat, go ahead.
I can upset your audience by telling them that the Hunger Games movie sucked.
I think my daughter would agree with you, my oldest kid. I mean, they read the book, and it was definitely a lot different. So Lagana said a book that different than the movie. Ben-Hur, Tell of Christ. First 300 pages were about three wise men. In the movie 59, it was only the first 3 minutes. Yes. But Eclectic Goat, go ahead and tell us, everybody, a little bit about yourself, your channel. I've just put the link in there. And
I am the Eclectic Goat. I am on Discord, Twitter, and YouTube as the Eclectic Goat. We have a Discord stream, the Eclectic Herd. Mostly we talk about tabletop role playing games, but I do encourage creation and creativity in all its forms. Um, let's see, what am I doing these days? So next Wednesday, I will be doing my Slice and Dice show, which is creators talking about the role playing games they're creating. Next Thursday is going to be a very busy day. I am on Jack Tarlad's show from 5 to 7 Eastern Standard Time, and then I am on Roman's show from 8 to 10. So maybe I'll get some
well,
dinner in there
you're going to be
somewhere.
busy. That's a late night for you too.
I am also working on a history of zombie movies, which I hope to put out right before 28 Years Later comes out. I am not going to try and compete with the big stations about reviewing 28 Years Later, so I thought I'd just give us a little prequel fun of building up, how we got to this movie. And yes, Read and Roll. That is Jack Tarlad's show. And I also have some role playing games that were sent to me by companies that I'm going to be doing reviews on. I hope at the end of this month, though the way the world is working, it may be longer than that. I hope not, though, because they sent them to me several weeks ago and I have been bad. So,
Okay.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that.
Oh, no problem. I'm glad, buddy, one of our great mods out here to put it out there for you. So,
and I'm hoping to get into more reviews in the future. I also have been recently looking on the Discord server for ways that people would like to see the channel get changed and become more interesting. So I may be doing more videos with some of those suggestions. If anyone has any suggestions, please feel free to join the Discord and give me your 2 cents. And so hopefully we will have more soon.
all right, that sounds good. And Jeff says zombies are a dead subject, one that draws in a brainless audience. Oh, Jeff. Oh, and the pod race, I mean chariot race. Nice, buddy. Well, I'll tell you, we still got 14 people here. That's what's amazing for this, and we've gone almost 3 hours. We could go longer, but we got to cut it off now. Eclectic Goat, thank you as always. The only thing I'm going to say, get the missus will be back tomorrow. Make sure, buddy, if you can put Mrs. Link in there for the morning, I appreciate it. But here's my stuff here. Live streams and videos on youtube.com, twitch.tv, manwalking55, and X. I'm promoting this right now because really for a while, the only 3 streams are the Monday night with Jess, Fortnite, Wednesday and Friday, the Squirrel streams at 10 p.m. Eastern. June may require some flexibility with work and some other things. I don't know yet. Waiting to see how it goes. So the best thing is to get the notifications on YouTube for me and on Twitter to see when I'm going to go live outside of those times. Yes, the Eclectic Goat. Yes, we need a part 3. Oh wow. Well, we'll talk about it. We'll have to see things and when the timing work. But I'm fascinated. I watched this chat guy here, and you guys rocked, and I've enjoyed the time Goat. I really have. It's been a lot of fun.
I thought for sure I wasn't going to be able to cover this topic and that I was going to have a hard time with 2 hours. So it's been mainly the chat's questions that have.
Hey, but see, they got questions, and I'll tell you what, that's why I like this chat around here. They're very, very knowledgeable, very interested, and really a part of it. So, on that note, I appreciate it. Remember, the missus will be live in the morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. I don't think I'm not. There we go. Thank you, buddy. The morning musings. If you need a daily dose of positivity, go swing by. Check in with her, and I love hearing her laugh at her own jokes and memes. It's hilarious. So if you need a laugh, go see her too. But also, like I mentioned, go stop by, say hi to the great Eclectic Goat. Make sure you subscribe to her channel if you have not already. Any last words, Eclectic Goat?
Happy headbutting.
Happy headbutting. On that note, good night, everybody. We will see you later. Bye, all.